Discovery, go and throttle up.
All right. Hello. Welcome to the Space and Rocket Review. You two girls, tell your friends. You in the hat. Space and Rocket Review. Space and Rocket Review. First time in a week. One night only. Space and Rocket Review. What's going on, everybody? How you doing? I'm EJ. This is EJ Space and Rocket Review. If you're on the YouTube side of things, I may or may not have, tried a new thumbnail today for the Space and Rocket Review. Oh, anonymous gifter gifted face wall a sub. Oh, thank you very much. Orange whip, orange whip, orange whip, 3 orange whips. So I may or may not. No, it's a good thumbnail. It's good, drummer. It's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong there. It's good. What? It's fine. Think more people will click on it? I think more people will click on that. We'll see. Anyway, if you're watching the VOD, this probably makes no sense. But, it's good. I didn't even notice I clicked on it way too fast. Dang. That's the sad truth. Yeah, long is wrong. Tight is right. Just gonna put that out there. Just let that one stew for a little while. Stare intensifying. I'll beat you in a staring contest. Damn it, I looked away. I looked at chat. Oh god, I lost. All right, cool. All right, Yuri, what's going on? How you guys doing? How's everybody doing? That is not what she said, but is it? You sure about that? You sure about that? All right, anyway. So, my Thanksgiving was great. I ate crayons and drank gasoline. No, I'm not kidding. No, I'm not telling you the context either. All right, cool. What I will tell you the context about is space. Space. Let's see. So, a lot has happened over the last week. So much that I don't really there's a lot of stuff. We could start with Falcon stuff, but what I want to do is go into the launch manifest and let's just dial it back and figure out exactly what we've missed over the past week. So let's go to next space flight, go to past launches. How many Falcon 9s did we miss? 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 4. That's fine. Yeah, that's right, Reaver. Yeah. So wax covered baby bells, then ethanol. Yeah, it's good. And then whatever that thing is, and then there was Soyuz 21 Fregat M Condor N degree 2 from Vostochny. Parametry constructor rocket nositel normal. Yes, normalno. You joining the Marines? You're eating crayons? No, it was a bet. I won.
This is space. I'm in space.
I won the bet for what it's worth. Don't eat crayons and don't drink gasoline. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that, okay? You bought courses for 3D art, for being a 3D artist in game development. Nice, Yuri. There you go. I won the bet, for what it's worth. Anyway, so there was a lot of Falcon 9 launches. We missed 4 last week, and there's actually, I believe there is 25 Falcon 9s lined up for December, which is like an advent calendar for Falcon 9s. Here. Let me get the link here. Hokey gifted a sub to Lynn Prode. Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. That's what I've been hearing. Let me just go find my sauce. Give me the sauce. Up. Dang. It's only 15. It's only 15 left to go. It's not 25. And there's the sauce. So this is Kiko Donchev. He's the VP of launching at SpaceX. And father of Fininoti, apparently. 15 Falcon launches in 2024. I wish it was 25. It could be 25. Could be. 25 days of space. Yeah, well, 15 launches. Yeah, dude, we'd be lucky to get 15 launches in a year, like 5 years ago, man. Hey, Aaron,
go at throttle up.
20-month resub. Thank you very much. So, 15 more launches for Falcon in 2024. SpaceX is trying. Hang on. Let me go back over here. They're trying for more. Oh. This infographic looks like a color blindness test. Okay. Baron, what are you saying? There's something sussy happening in Vandenberg. SpaceX started the streams for both launches at T plus 45 seconds, just showing a shot of the rocket's rear end, and even the post-launch pics didn't show anything near the pad. 15 was a super busy year. Most were a lot less from the U.S. anyway. Yeah, David, right? Can you remember that? Yeah. What flavor? What's your favorite flavor? Grape. Yeah, grape. Midusama. Konnichiwa. Did you see the pictures of the 2 stack-based sections of SRB SLS-2? The aft segments for SLS have been moved out of the RPRSF and have been moved into the VAB for stacking, and they are stacked on the mill. We'll get to that.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Yeah. Human Fart Cave, 7-month resub. That's good. Great name. Here is picture. All right, check this out. So I wanted to get a little bit more into Falcon 9 stuff, but we will look at that real quick. The 2 aft segments for SLS, the second SLS, 2 aft SRB segments are stacked. The next ones should be the segments on top. There's 4 more to go on top of these on either side. So that's cool. And also some nice pictures of the tail service mast umbilicals. Well, you're missing one over there, but they're technically covered. Yeah. Right. So we have the 2 aft segments right there. These are the spots where it plugs up to the core stage. There's 6 struts in total. There's 2 verticals on either side, and then there's a diagonal there. That is to prevent torsional forces on the stack. You don't want the stack, like if these are the SRBs, you don't want the SRBs doing this, especially around the bottom. So there's a diagonal. There's a little bit of a triangulation right there. You can see it. So there's 1, 2, and 3 that attach to the MPS. Yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. Anyway, back over to Falcon 9 real quick. I wanted to show you guys something. There was a tweet from spaceflight enthusiast Ryan Caton of NASA Spaceflight Now TMRO live show. Ryan actually did some number crunching here. And, hey, Surette. That's because rockets wobble. Yeah? Check this out. So Ryan said, for context, since January 1st, SpaceX has launched the same number of times. And keep in mind, this was from a couple of days ago. So the number's actually gone up since then. I think. When did he post this? The 27th. Yeah, it's gone up. Anyway. John, I'll get to that too. So, for context, since January 1st, SpaceX has launched the same number of times, 123, as Roscosmos has since November of 2013, ULA since May of 2010, and Arianespace since May of 2009. That figure includes Starship. Ah, okay. Falcon has launched more times this year than Ariane 4, 116, Ariane 5, 117, and Atlas 5, 101, did through their entire careers. At their current launch rate, if extrapolated for the remaining 33 days of the year, SpaceX could match the number of flights of the space shuttle through its entire career, 135. What's up with the thumbnail? I don't know, trying something a little different. Yeah. Yeah, about that. Yeah, about that. That's pretty crazy, man. So, like I said, there were 4 Falcon 9s last year, but here, I wanted to show you guys something. Alex is actually the one that brought this attention to me. There's a picture, SpaceX posted some pictures of Falcon 9 leaving pad 40, right? I know what blimey means, Dread Swirl. I've watched too much Top Gear to not understand that. So, check this out. This is a picture of one of the Falcon 9s going off, right? Everything looks real nice. Everything looks real good. What's that? What's that? You know, that thing that says Falcon Heavy on it? Now, let me zoom out. Let me zoom out a little bit. Look at that fairing, and then look at that fairing. Uh-oh. Alex found an extended fairing. There's the Falcon Heavy extendo fairing. There it is. First time I've ever seen it. That's for sure. So that fairing, we've heard about it. We've never seen one before. That fairing right there, the one that says Falcon Heavy on it, is an extended fairing that the Department of Defense paid SpaceX to engineer to launch national security payloads on Falcon Heavy. The extendo fairing was part of the National Security Space Launch Contract Phase 2 Launch Services procurement. So NSSL Phase 2 LSP, in which Falcon and Falcon Heavy got 40% of launch contracts for out of the basically for national security missions from I think it was 2020 to 2028. ULA got the other 60%. Anyway, SpaceX said that it's proposed a Falcon Heavy with an extended fairing to move frick-all into space. I don't know what they're trying to move, but they're trying to move something into space that needs a bigger fairing because it's the Department of Defense. But that is the first time I've ever seen it, and I'm pretty dang sure that that's either a test article or the actual fairing, because it says Falcon Heavy on it. See, it says, see right there, it says Falcon Heavy on it. You can tell because of the way it is. So that's actually pretty nuts. That's the first time I've ever seen that thing. That's the first time any of us seen it. And I don't know if SpaceX put it there on purpose. I don't know if they put it there. I don't know if they put it there on purpose or if they're teasing us or something. I don't know why it would be there. Why would it be at pad 40? I have no idea. Pretty crazy though. Are you sure it's not Elon's teleportation device? I am pretty sure. Now there is more Falcon 9 news here. Let me show you. I mean, there's a ton of Falcon 9 news. Check this out. This is from the 25th. So this is from last week, but this is pertinent spaces. Speaking of Falcon Heavy, check this out. This is NASA's Launch Services Program. If you don't know what NASA LSP is the kind of people that are responsible for figuring out what NASA scientific payloads needs to launch on what rocket. So like, oh, we need a Curiosity rover. It needed to launch on Atlas V. So Perseverance did launch on Atlas V because it already was configured for it, right? Now, the reason why I mentioned Curiosity and Perseverance, the two twin rovers that, well, they're kind of twins, but they're kind of not, similar design. The reason why I mentioned that is because LSP was recently handed, a job for NASA's Dragonfly mission. So what is Dragonfly? Dragonfly is a Curiosity or Perseverance rover with the wheels cut off. Yeah, it's one of those with no wheels. It's got helicopter landing skids because it's a drone. It is a drone version of Perseverance. And this one is not going to Mars. Dragonfly is going to Titan. We'll explore Saturn's moon Titan, examining dozens of promising locations. Titan is the second largest moon in our solar system and has a nitrogen-based atmosphere that is 4 times denser than Earth's. And they selected SpaceX to fly the thing on Falcon Heavy. Where does the rover go? That's right, it goes in the helicopter hole. Yep. So, not only are we getting Falcon Heavy with an extended fairing, but we're also getting Falcon Heavy nuclear certed capable. Because this rover, or this drone, is nuclear powered. It has an RTG in the back, just like Perseverance and Curiosity do. So Falcon Heavy is going, well, because LSP awarded this contract, it has a nuclear certification, meaning it can launch nuclear active payloads. Not many rockets can do that. Is the design based off of Curiosity and Perseverance? Yes, it is. It's the same rover base, but with no wheels. It's the same base, it's the same design, same chassis, but they took the wheels off and they put helicopter skids, right? And then they attached fans to the side. SpaceX is going to get a lot of government contracts, you think, in the next 4 years? Yeah, maybe. So, how's that, huh? Are you saying this sucker's nuclear? No, this sucker's electrical, but I need a radioisothermic electric generator to generate the power that I need to fly around. They told me to build him a rover. So I took their plutonium and gave him a shoddy bomb rover made of used pinball machine parts. Come on, let's get you a radiation suit. Would a keyhole fit in the extended fairing? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe yourself. My theory on chat is like mushrooms. Feed them, keep them in the dark. Before you move on, Falcon Heavy's extended fairing design first. will be used for the power and propulsive element in Halo. Yeah, if that ever works. I've seen it once before from a picture during acoustic tests.
This
Nice.
is space.
Hey,
I'm in
Dredzo,
space.
gifted 5 subs. Thank you very much. 1.21 gigawatts. Do you think those DoD launches could be rods from the gods? I don't know, dude. I don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, so pretty cool. See last. Nope. You see my last because I replied to you already and you missed it. So we got Falcon Heavy's fairings coming along. We got the Dragonfly mission. That's not going to launch for a little while, but it still is really cool. The DoD just posted a request for information for Slick 37. Oh. Oh. We will check that out in a second. Let me just get through the rest of this because there's a whole thing on Falcons. And check this out. So we had, out of the 4 Falcons that launched, we had 3 launch from the Cape and 1 launch from Vandenberg. Now here, check out this picture. Julia Bergeron, a NASA space flight contributor. Julia was down at the port and she posted this in Port Canaveral. Booster selfie number 207. There's 3 Falcon 9s chilling at the port. At least there was this morning. They're probably gone by now. Check this out. 3 of them. Not twins. Triplets. 1083, 1080, and 1078. Right there. Being processed in various states of processing. On at Port Canaveral. How's that, huh? Give us the link. Okay, all right. Here. Hook your peepers on that one. So Falcon 9 is just basically going beast mode. Pretty crazy, right? I think that's super cool. 3 of them just chilling. Combined between 1083, 1080, and 1078 are 34 flights, which is pretty dang cool. I'd like to add that 2 of these boosters landed on the same drone ship. So one landed on a drone ship, it came back, immediately took it off, and then the drone ship went back out and got another one. I think it was 1080 and 1083 that both landed on that drone ship right there. 1078 landed on Shortfall. I think that's, of course, I Still Love You right there. And then that would mean that 1078 landed on Shortfall at Gravitas, and ASOG is gone. They used the crane, they took the booster, took it off the drone ship and put it on the ground there on its landing legs. Is that crazy or what? There's 2 at Long Beach as well. Oh. Yeah. Brand spanking new SpaceX booster 1088.1 returns home after its first mission. Yep. Jeez. Who took these pictures? Matt Hartman. Very cool. Dude, look at that. Would you? They are. The 3 drone ships that SpaceX operates right now are Shortfall at Gravitas, Just Read the Instructions, and of course I Still Love You. Of course I Still Love You is on the West Coast. Okay, so Just Read the Instructions and a Shortfall at Gravitas are the ones that are at the Cape. Excuse me. There was a time where I could really keep track of this, but the cadence is so ridiculously high. They launch a lot. Crew were out for Thanksgiving, that's why they didn't move it. Same thing as Starbase in Long Beach. They gave workers an extended vacation for a couple of days. Cool. There's 3, Surrett. Yeah. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So Falcon 9's just going into overdrive, and we have 15. There's 15 launches left on the books for SpaceX. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Pretty cool. Olivia, your daughter loved watching the super cool. Probably one you probably already know. What is this? Oh, Mark Rober is working on a CubeSat. Cool. That's awesome. That's cool, Alleviate. It launches from Vandenberg. That's neat. Hey, J Shelf, 55-month
Discovery,
resub.
go at throttle up.
Thank you. The CubeSat is flying on a transporter mission. How ridiculous is that, guys? That transporter, the cost of reserving a spot on SpaceX's rideshare missions is so low that YouTubers can afford it. Now, here's the interesting thing. YouTubers they're like, oh, YouTubers can afford it. YouTubers, if you're a popular YouTuber, you make a lot of money, right? But the fact that that's even a thing in my mind is ridiculous. This is something that no, that's not something that used to happen ever. Right? That's the fact that, like, you know, content creators can make enough cash to launch something into space is pretty cool. And it does show that, you know, the cost of getting stuff into space has gone down. Like, you know, everybody, theorizes that it's gone down, right? But that's pretty good evidence right there. It helps that he's former JPL. Yeah, Mark Rober knows how to make satellites because that's what he did. That's why EJ started streaming on YouTube. Yeah, Greg, any supplemental income would be nice. All my old crappy cars aren't going to fix themselves. Gotta have parts. So we're going to be the first Twitch stream that sends something into space? Thought about it. Starship and boosters will need barges to move hardware from Boca Chica to KSC. I think they're going to have a breakover device and transport them horizontally, Gwen, but I'm not sure. I don't know that for sure. So here, I want to get into the RFI for Complex 37, but let's get through the rest of the news here real quick. So we'll start with more SpaceX stuff. So this is the, I forget his name. This is the guy that's commanding the From 2 mission, and we got an update from him. Finally, we will see free Wi-Fi spot at the South Pole, 430 kilometers above. From 2 will use Starlink in space, providing valuable data for future communication systems necessary for human spaceflight missions to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. We'll continue to help test laser-based satellite communication using optical links between the Dragon spacecraft and Starlink satellites, revolutionizing the speed and quality of space communications. I'm pretty sure Polaris Dawn did that too, but probably the same mechanism. But this is another commercial mission. From 2 is a commercial mission that SpaceX is launching with 4 crew on a Dragon, and that Dragon is going to be the first human-rated spacecraft ever to go to a polar orbit. From 2 is going to happen sometime in Q1 or Q2 next year. I don't know exactly. I think they said Q1 next year, but we'll see. So From 2 is called From 2 because the From mission was an expedition to the South Pole. This is From 2. First humans to ever go into polar orbit. Yeah, never been done before. Pretty cool. When NSF CubeSat rideshare. Let me talk to Das. We'll see. Kind of sad NASA isn't doing anything like that. If they had Ares 1, they could do stuff like that. In fact, I think that would have been a great test for the Orion capsule. Just putting it out there. Do the YouTube thumbnail. The YouTube thumbnail is mint. Sorry, it makes me laugh. Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah. Creeper, your messages, too. The Greg Scott pictures. So Greg Scott is a photographer down at the Cape. Check this out, dudes. You guys want to see something cool? We're going to switch gears a little bit to Starship. Also, New Glen's was destacked. Blue Origin took New Glen, destacked it, and rolled it back into the HIF. We don't know exactly why. They went radio silent after that, so I hope everything's okay. Where are those doggone pictures? Give me 1 second. So Greg Scott took some pictures here. Yeah, that was before the other booster came in. Oh. Actually, I didn't notice before from these Greg Scott pictures. Look, there are cranes out there again. There are cranes out there working on that pad. The Starship pad, so to speak. What's the Dragon reentry look like on a polar orbit? I don't know. It depends, John. I would assume they're probably going to try to come down somewhere in the Pacific off the coast of California. Probably coming down in a similar area as a shuttle polar once around without the cross range. So it's going to be good ways off the Pacific coast, if I had to guess. I mean, I don't know for sure. No, Gwen, not really. No Starliner news. I haven't heard anything. I'll let you know. But yeah, look, Greg's photo. They're working on it. This is another picture. Creeper, I'm not sure where his original post is, but Greg, yeah, go follow Greg. He's a great photographer. He does awesome flyovers. There's one of Blue. Blue's still building big buildings down there. That's New Glen's factory right there, and it looks like they need more space. But here, check this out. This is one photo that Greg took of the flyby. This is Hangar X. So this is SpaceX's Roberts Road facility. What's that? What's this thing? Uh-oh. That's a Starship launch pad. I can say that with very reasonable conviction because SpaceX is building one with the exact same parts at Boca right now. That's the exact same piece that's at the Sanchez site. You saw it on NSF and they didn't mention it. Yeah. Yeah, they're building. So that's what I mean. That Greg Scott picture, we saw at 39A, they have a bunch of cranes out there working on the Starship pad. And then we see an OLM. We start seeing OLM parts at Roberts Road. SpaceX is going to start working on their Cape Starship pad. Well, not going to start. They've already started. Interestingly enough. Identical. Here, let me see if NSF has any pictures of it floating around. Oh. I missed that dang thing. Dragon thing. Poetic. OLM is designed, and I also heard the big crane is going to destroy the big LOX tank near the pad. Is this an RGB picture? Because that's kind of what I was looking for, but also, yeah. Here, check this out. Look. So you see these long parts right here with the hatchways right there? It's kind of trapezoidal in shape. That's the part that showed up. These pieces down here, the bottom layer of this has started showing up at the Cape interestingly enough. Hey, S, what's going on? Oh, you're over there too. You're in two places at once. Super Heavy. Where does Super Heavy go? That's right. It goes in the square hole. So, yeah, this is SpaceX's upgraded launch platform. It's a square instead of a circle. The old one is kind of a circular design. This one is a square. They've seemed to have redesigned it. Now, this one is at Boca Chica, and it's obviously a lot further along. But the parts, duplicate parts, have started showing up at the Cape as well, which is pretty cool. Hey, S, I was driving home from Detroit over the weekend, and I took I-80 to avoid snowstorms. Took 80 to 81 to 84 and crossed the Hudson River at 84. Picking up what I'm laying down? Pretty cool. It's a nice bridge. It's a nice bridge. Well, pretty good. You picking up? Yeah. No? All right, cool. Interesting. I thought they wouldn't build the second one until they tested the first one. Yeah, Raiden, I mean, this isn't the first time that SpaceX built an entire tower at 39A and then decided, no, hold up. You know, so we'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm trying to see if they have any pictures. Hello, mate. May I ask if you are cross-eyed? Nope. Nope, I just like doing this sometimes. Nice, I just drove home from Austin last night. I do, yeah, okay, cool. All right, sweet. Sweet. I'm trying to find a picture. I'm trying to find a picture of those parts. When you're free, go back to Greg's pictures and look for ML2. There's a new big orange crane. It's the same crane that built the second tower in Boca Chica. It's a CC-8800. They moved the CC-8800 to the Cape. Yeah. That's kind of what I was looking for. That's how I drove up to your place. Got on 80 in State College, 81 to 84. Yeah. Yeah, around Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, people drive like trash. And then you get into Connecticut and people drive like even more trash. And then, yeah, then you get through Poughkeepsie, well, New York before Danbury. Yeah, that whole segment, just poo-poo. From like Scranton all the way to Hartford. Just, what a fustercluck. What a fustercluck. These people can't drive for any. I'm saying that for somebody from Massachusetts. Those people suck at driving. Like, I know we suck. We're bad, but that was worse. Yeah, I like that segment. No. Bad. Anyway, I was trying to find a picture of the CC-8800, but the big crane that built the second tower at Boca Chica is now at the Cape. It's at 39A. That's what I was trying to find good pictures of. I don't really have much good picture. Oh, I may have misspoke. Sorry about that. It's working on ML2, not OLM2. Okay? I misspoke. I said OLM2. No, it's working on the SLS mobile launcher, the CC-8800. They're building it over there. Yeah, interesting. As a Brit, my entire U.S. coast-to-coast experience right there, most of y'all are terrible. How do you you know? How do you know? You drive on the other side of the road. You can't judge us. We drive on a different side of the road. Your judgment doesn't matter here. Plus, we threw tea in a harbor 250 years ago to make it so your judgment doesn't count at all anyway. So, I mean, not wrong side of the road notwithstanding or something. What is the other platform there? ML3? That's MLP3, or I think it's MLP1. Hold on, I can look at it. Yeah, that's yep, MLP1. So you guys remember, actually this is a good time to mention this. Do you guys remember when I said SLS has a weight problem and how the second mobile launcher has to be built in a very specific way? It has to be simultaneously the lightest mobile launcher ever devised by NASA and launch the heaviest rocket that NASA's ever launched at the same time. You remember that? I had a good spiel on that last week. You know, people harp on Bechtel for that contract for the ML getting spiraling out of control. Now, don't get me wrong, it's mostly because of them, but also NASA set them up to fail with that contract. Because they have to design a mobile launcher.
Oh, nice.
Oh, sorry. Cleater was playing in the background. I don't know why. Wait, why did it start a Cleater video? Oh, sweet. It started a Cleater video. I ain't even mad. It was the construction video. Why did it start that? I didn't click on. Okay, Synergy is starting to mess up, dudes. I gotta use another program. This is the second time this has happened this stream. I thought you were NASA. Okay. I thought you were cross-eyed. Okay, so we will watch that Cleater video later, or I will, you guys won't. Let me close that tab out. It was the construction video. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway. It just wanted you to see the new house update. Dude, it like auto-played. I didn't click on that. My mouse didn't even go up there. Why would it auto-play? That's so strange. Did you notice that Synergy says beta version? You always have the beta version. I don't know, dude. I'd have to go look at it. Yeah, see the hat? Yeah, there you go. Anyway, so I talked a little while back about the weight issues. And now, look, this is a mobile launcher platform. That's MLP1 right there. Do you see all the concrete blocks on MLP1? They had to see if the crawler transporter could move it. See what I'm talking about? They put more and more concrete blocks on that thing to try and get one of these things to equate out to what they think the weight of this thing and an SLS will be. Actually, in this picture, it looks like they've taken some off. But see all the concrete on the sides? The SLS TVC wiggle is moved off center. What the heck is going on here? All this stuff, I haven't changed anything, man. Anyway, there's the wigglies. There we go. Are we good? We'll just write this one up to first day being back from vacation, okay? They use the MLP with those concrete blocks for crawler weight conditioning. Oh, there you go, Rev. But they did do a weight test with it. I'm more or less pointing out the concrete blocks. There was definitely more on that thing. He said moron. They look heavy. If I had to guess, you probably think about 50,000 pounds of pop. Yep. Your computers are protesting you being away for so long. Dude, they're doing something. First, like, it changed OBS scenes on me without me doing anything. And then, yeah, then it was like, then it just did, it played a Cleater video completely randomly. I don't know how that Cleater video, A, came up and B, started playing. Like, unless I accidentally clicked on the autoplay function or something. But yeah, that's a YouTuber, that car YouTuber that I watch. I'm a pretty big fan of. He's a great YouTuber. Please, you ever see this? Shout out. I met you at Les Mullets. Pretty cool. You're a pretty cool dude. Talk to you about space. We went to the moon, man. All right, we did. Okay. Sorry, that was the conversation we had. What do you want? Dusty software after vacation. Yep. And testing, I'm sure. Are we there yet? No! Anyway, so yeah, that's actually a pretty good... This picture is also a Greg Scott picture. Very good stuff. But yeah, that shows you the weight things that I was telling you about. They put all the weight on an MLP and they rolled it out the crawler way to make sure that this thing is light. And also, I want to just point out, look at how lightweight this crawler design is comparatively. It's using all cylindrical beams instead of like I-beams like in the past. Interestingly enough. I have no doubt, and I know the crawlers rolling SLS back and forth took a beating. Dang thing's too heavy, dude. It's too heavy. It's too heavy. Just saying. Anyway, good stuff. I'm trying to find anything else here. Let me look around. Oh yeah, there's a little bit more news here. Check this out. This is coming from Sierra Space. Sierra Space has new pictures of the Shooting Star, their Shooting Star cargo module that's designed to attach to the back of Dream Chaser, their Dream Chaser spacecraft. They got 2 in the pipe here, which is pretty sweet. As our first Shooting Star cargo module undergoes final testing at NASA Kennedy in Florida, our second and third ones are in build at our Dream Factory in Colorado. They call it a Dream Factory. Okay. These modules significantly increase the cargo capacity of Dream Chaser and provide versatile capability. Oh, that's the second and the third one, dude. Awesome. They're really doing work here. That's pretty sweet. Dream Chaser's probably going to fly early next year with this Shooting Star. The Shooting Star is basically a payload attachment fitting that has solar panels on it to have a spacecraft. So you have a spacecraft like Dream Chaser right there, and the Shooting Star attaches to the back. And it's a cargo module. It can free float. It can free fly. It has its own redundant guidance control system. So if it separates, it can just stay up there. It serves as a payload adapter. It serves as a station module adapter. It's actually a really versatile piece of kit. Starting to see if they have some like stock footage of or renders of one. There they are putting the common berthing mechanism, the CBM, on the back. That's the back of the Shooting Star. This is at Kennedy. That's serial number 1 right there. 2 and 3 are what they just posted. There's a picture of one. So Dream Chaser is basically going to have, like you'd have a pickup truck. Like if the space shuttle, right, is a semi-truck, Dream Chaser is a little pickup truck, and it's a little pickup truck that has a little trailer behind it. See the little trailer? And this thing will basically rendezvous near the International Space Station, and they'll grab Shooting Star with the remote manipulator and berth it to the space station, which is pretty cool. It's going to mark... It is an uncrewed system. It's just for cargo resupply, but it'll mark the first time a shuttle in any form has been to the station since July of 2011, which is actually really cool. That's good. Once again, that launch is going to happen on Vulcan sometime next year, earlier next year, sooner rather than later. What's the propulsion like on Dream Chaser? Well, the Dream Chaser has its own reaction control systems, just like the shuttle did. It's different. It's not like Starliner's thrusters. And then Shooting Star, I do believe, has its own thruster package on it, if I'm remembering correctly. Why is there a sofa on top? That is what's called an aft cargo carrier. It's an aft cargo carrier, Wolfie. It's a satellite dispenser. That's what it is. They're SAT dispensers. Dream Chaser is basically a la carte. You can attach whatever you want to it. Just in time for the ISS to not be used anymore. Dang. Well, they canceled the ISS early. Dude, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Speaking of ISS resupply, we will pivot. We'll pivot a little bit. Speaking of ISS resupply, Progress capsule came up to the ISS the other day, and they opened it up and started to get the supplies out, and they smelled something weird. The astronauts reported strange smells coming from Progress spacecraft. Did you just make a Friends pivot? No, it's more of a Silicon Valley, but Friends is applicable, Fahrenheit. It smelled. Yeah, it seems it didn't come from inside the Progress spacecraft. From Anatoly's article, contamination was from trapped hypergolic exhaust that came from the Progress that departed the space station a couple weeks ago. Inadequate venting procedure led to hypergolic exhaust getting stuck in the docking module. All right, let me pull up a picture of the SSVP. So, Soyuz and Progress use a probe and drogue style docking system. This is actually coming from Anatoly's Act. This is off Russian space web. So it's probe and drogue. You have a probe and you have a drogue. Okay. So what happens is when the spacecraft comes in, this thing locks into the square hole. No, it's circle hole here, and it's conic. So it basically serves as a guide, and it guides the spacecraft in. Now, what happens is the probe can retract, right? And when it retracts, this conic piece right here will seat itself inside of this cone. And then it butts up the docking surfaces right here, 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 and here to each other. And those have your drive hooks that drive it together. So some propellant from a spacecraft from the last Progress that left the station, apparently, this is what just somebody just told me in chat, got caught in this area right here. So when they opened it up, it smelled. They were it's most likely like UDMH and NTO mixture, so it's quite pungent. Stings the nostrils. Chad, I'm not going to lie to you. That smells like pure UDMH. It's called UDMH by Russ Cosmos. It's illegal in 9 countries. All right, Ben, you're off for your driver's test. Good luck, buddy. 60% of the time, it works. Every time. That doesn't even make sense. So, yeah, that's good. So, I'm not going to lie to you. I just learned that it was the outgoing spacecraft. I thought this thing was leaking propellant. If it's leaking propellant, you got a big problem. But if it's just outgassing that got caught in the SSVP, then, yeah. I mean, improper venting, yeah. See, it got caught in this in the circle hole. It was supposed to go in the square hole. If anybody wonders why spacecraft take a long time to dock, right? Like when a spacecraft docks, have you ever watched docking coverage with me of like Dragon or Starliner once, or any other spacecraft docking to the space station? They dock the craft and they drive the hooks together, and then part of it is getting your spacecraft pressure equalized to your spaceship pressure, and then the inner vestibule also getting equalized. So there's always a little bit of aggregate space here between the station and the spacecraft where the doors have to open, right? So NASA calls it the vestibule. This is just this is just an area between the SSVP probe and drogue, right? But yeah, you want to vent that down. You want to vent it down when a ship is leaving, and when a ship docks, you want to pressurize it, because you don't want to have a shock change in pressure. You don't want to open the door and make a huge draft in the space station. That'll break your life support systems. Life support systems are not designed to go from like 14 to 20 psi and then back in like 2 seconds. They're not really designed to do that. That's bad for them. That breaks things. So Yeah, not venting this is not great. That's not really good procedure. But everything seems okay, so check the last paragraph. I don't want to. What's the last paragraph? At the same time, sources within the Russian space industry indicated that smell and possibly droplets could have originated not from the cargo compartment of the newly arrived Progress, but from Ploisk's docking mechanism after the departure of Progress MS-27. In fact, the working hypothesis was that ground control failed to perform a routine purging of propellant lines between the station and Progress 27 before its undocking. As a result, toxic residue, a hypergolic propellant remaining in the lines, could easily spill into the main cavity of the docking mechanism on Ploisk. It's a ground control function. Not great. Not great, Bob. That's not really smart. Yeah, okay. Oh, shoot. Yeah, really don't want to get lazy, especially with this old of a space station. You guys got to remember, these components, all of the ISS components were manufactured in the 80s. The ISS is basically a result of the Soviet Union collapsing in 1991, and the Soviet Union basically pooling the modules that it had, right? Pooling the modules that it had made for Mir 2, their second dedicated space station. And on the US side, it was the manufactured and completed components of Space Station Freedom. They took Space Station Freedom and Mir 2, cut off the bits that they didn't need, or cut the programs that they didn't need to make one functioning station, and then made one functioning station. So, like, you don't need two propulsion modules. They cut out Space Station Freedom's propulsion modules because Zvezda, the Russian propulsion module, would be attached to the back of the ISS, and you don't need two propellant systems, right? So they basically cannibalized Space Station Freedom, all the parts that they had made for Space Station Freedom, and cannibalized all the parts that the Soviet Union had for Mir 2, and basically made a space station out of spare parts from Mir and Space Station Freedom. That's what the ISS is. Those components were made a lot of the ISS stuff was made in the 80s, dude. Yeah. Oops. On both sides. Yeah. What do you think they'll do to fix the steel deformation on Starship, assuming that they need space for catching? The steel deformation? What part, Chaz? Russia needs to update their space program. Russia needs to do a lot of things. Upgrading their space program is probably a good idea, especially, because it's not just Russians that are in danger here. It's like the whole international crew. Not cool. This is really not cool. That could kill you. Let me put it to you like this. If it's unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine or nitrogen tetroxide, you inhale enough of that, it'll kill you instantly. Like, luckily, the ppm seems to be low because no one on the ISS is dead. So it wasn't enough to kill you, but it was almost enough, because if you smelled it, that's not good. That's enough to be quite pungent. Stings the nostrils. Yeah. Not only space program. Yeah, Yuri, we're not touching that here. We don't need to be reminded of that. Yeah, that's probably something we should discuss, especially since I don't know what the heck that means. Okay. American components, Russian components, all made in Taiwan. So are we going to do the Slick 37 news, or are we just ignoring it now? We're not ignoring it. Baron just is giving me Baron over there in the Twitch chat is giving me links faster than I can talk. I'm sorry. I'm trying to explain this stuff. Some of the stuff's complicated. You can't keep posting the damn links, buddy. No, it's all good, man. But I'm having trouble keeping up. I can't talk fast enough. Here, anyway, let's get to the next bit. Jessica Meyer posted this. Check this out. Bam boom 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 bam boom boom bam boom 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 bam 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 bam. Small like Billie Jean in the movie scene. She said, "I am the one." But this the gift is not my. I don't want to. I've got to change the lyrics somehow. We got to make them space theme. My suit is the one. Anyway, so that's pretty cool. She's testing out the let's see, moonwalking into Monday. Some footage from a recent evaluation I participated in at Johnson in the NASA government reference model lunar spacesuit. Here I am attached to the special system called Argos, which offloads the suit and gives me that 1/6 lunar gravity sensation. Can't even describe how fun it was to practice walking on the moon. Yeah, baby. We'll be back there. It looks like it's the reference model suit. So the Axiom suit is probably derived from that, but it's still cool. This is, if I'm looking at this right, this looks to be testing the Argos. They're probably testing Argos for the Axiom suits, if I had to guess. That's my guess. Because why would you test a suit that's no longer being made? Right? How is she moonwalking in a spacesuit? Are you serious? I just told you that a moment ago. But why male models? Oh, nice, Graham. I got you. That was so loud. And it's gone. Did it play the music? Hold on. This headset going off. The headset times out because it's a wireless headset, so sometimes I don't hear what's going on in the playback. Oh, that's great. Yep, that will absolutely claim the VOD. Yeah, we'll roll with it. We'll see what happens. Hopefully my talking over it and going bam, bam, and doing my own thing over it will fix it. Hopefully. We'll see. It may have not been enough to register a claim, but we'll see what happens. Glad I was here to witness a YouTube cope. Yeah, it's only my paycheck, Chaz, right? Yeah, no, I'm just gonna sit here and cope over making less money for doing more work. It's totally unreasonable. Can you end the stream and restart to be safe? So it'll claim one of that. Don't worry about it. It's fine. The satisfactory stream? I don't think it got claimed, no. TLDR. Baron? No. No. Baron, stop. Stop it. Stop it. RFI first. Tender offer later. Okay? Not done. Not done. Not done. This is the exact thing I told you just to calm down on like 5 minutes ago. Nope. Nope. No paragraph. You gotta learn what's going on with Hermes. Anyway, so Hermes, what do they got? Quarterhouse is the first step in our journey to radically accelerate air travel. Listen to Sky Shuford break down our goals with the first Quarterhouse model Mark 1 and check the whole video here. All right, well,
in the world
okay,
where
cool.
if you build it, they will come. But I think everyone can agree that flying on a slow plane sucks. Quarter Horse is a series of single-engine vehicles. The first vehicle is our Mark 1. Mark 1 is really focused around takeoff and landing of something with short, stubby wings as a remotely piloted vehicle.
Quarter Horse is Hermes' first aircraft in a 3-plane series. Walk, crawl, then run. With a cadence of 1 plane a year, they're aiming to succeed in Quarter Horse's ability for remote takeoff.
So this is our flight deck. As I mentioned, that this is a remotely piloted vehicle. So we don't have a pilot station on board, so the pilot stations are in here. It's a pretty simple system. Mark 1 is pretty simple. There aren't a lot of bells and whistles on it, which is how we move so fast. It takes 1 person. So that's something that's...
Hey, nice joystick. Yo, that's a Warthog. That is a very nice HOTAS. Very nice. Nice.
It's been really important to us. Now, it takes a team to understand the entire vehicle in case something goes wrong, because there's always unknowns.
Did they blank out the telemetry in that last shot, but definitely didn't blank it out in this shot? All right.
Entire vehicle in case something goes wrong, because there's always unknowns.
The remote takeoff factor is one component of the Quarter Horse program. Moving fast to learn and innovate on this technology is key to unlocking hypersonic air travel. Hermes' goal is to make a Mark 1 test flight later this year.
Later this year. All right. Cool. So what is Hermes doing? How's that? Is that the quiet supersonic transport? What is this? Hermes is looking at making better forms of propulsion for aircraft. That's really what they're...
very few things...
Shut up. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to... Just autoplayed the damn thing. What the hell's wrong with the damn computer, man? Hermes is looking at optimizing propulsion. They're looking at trying to make better off-the-shelf jet engines that can go supersonic. And that is one of their test articles for it. That's why they have like a remotely piloted system. A remotely piloted system instead of a instead of like Boom Supersonic, for instance, who have a piloted system. Here. You want to see, if none of that made any sense here, look, pretty colors, okay? Headphone users, this might get loud. Headphone users, you have 10 seconds to comply. This one's probably going to be loud. That's not good. Yeah, see, that's what they're... Louder? Is that good enough? You guys want That's what you wanted to do. Alright, cool. Permanent ear damage. Check Discord. That's great. I don't need memes about me making less money because 30-second segment on my 12-hour stream means that somebody can access the entire 12-hour stream for monetization. I don't need to be reminded of that, Trey. Please, yeah, no, don't. Yeah. Anyway, okay, let's get to this RFI. Anyway, sorry, I'm grumbling. Wait, what? One of NASA's videos had Michael Jackson playing on it, and my headphones, because they're wireless, they shut off. They time out if they don't hear, if no sound is playing after a little while, so I didn't hear it. So hopefully me making goofy MJ noises over it will be enough, hopefully. We'll see if it gets claimed. I'll let you know. All right. The next bit here is the RFI for Space Launch Complex 37. So, a little bit of an overview here. Space Launch Complex 37, or SLC 37, for the last 30 years and change, has been a Delta IV launch complex. Launching at first Delta IV, Delta IV 4, and then Delta IV 5, and then Delta IV Heavy. Yes, those are the different variants. Delta IV 4, Delta IV 5, Delta 5 4, 5 2, etc., etc. Delta has a lot of different types of parts that it could have launched, but there's no more of those. Anyway, so this is SLC 37 right here. SLC 37 was originally built for the Apollo program. It was built to launch Saturn 1B. There were 2 pads. You can see the pedestal for each pad is basically right here. It would have been basically right here. And the other one would have been basically right there. And this diamond right there is where your fixed service structure would have been for all the umbilicals. I might have a picture of it lying around here in my rocket research pictures. Let's see. I'm looking through it. Saturn 5, Saturn 5, Saturn 5. That's SLC 34, or Launch Complex 34. It's not SLC 34. I got that damn freaking MJ song stuck in my head. Nope. We're gonna have to go find some pictures. Let's go here. Let's bring that down here like this. Bring that up here like that. Hey, Will, what's going on? Okay, don't play any Cleater videos. I mean, we could. There's a new F-150 battle video. Could. I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do that to you, boy, like that. You're probably not going to find good stuff on YouTube. Hold on. Let's, SLC 37. Here, let's... All these pictures are all Delta IV. There we go. There we go. That's off the wiki, so it should be good. So the Delta IV pad was built directly next to it. When the pad was reused, they didn't utilize any of this. And they basically just crudely pasted a Delta IV pad to the right of the Saturn pads. That's the pad that Delta takes off from. It has the mobile service tower that can move back and forth, right? They didn't use any of the Saturn infrastructure. They just, like I said, just crudely pasted a Delta IV pad on top of it. You just crudely pasted your face over mine. So that's what SLC 37 looked like at one point. It, once again, was a twin pad launch complex. And it's cool because it has a service structure that actually could move back and forth between the pads. This is your bridge crane and integration. So you could move left, right, left, right, left, right. And you could stack a rocket over here. Their mobile service tower could move back over towards pad A, launch something from pad B and build something at pad A and then move back and forth. Or if you needed to do 2 launches simultaneously, you could park it in the center and then launch one and launch the other right after. Why would you do this way? SLC 37 was made as a backup. It was made as a backup in case the Saturn V didn't work. So if the Saturn V didn't pan out in time and NASA still wanted to get people to the moon by the end of the decade and the Saturn V didn't work, you could do the Apollo program with an EOR architecture, Earth Orbit Rendezvous architecture. So you could have a Saturn 1B loaded right here with your lander, you could have a Saturn 1B with the LEM right here, a Saturn 1B with the CSM, right? Launch that, and then another Saturn. Actually, you'd probably put the LEM up in space, stack the crew over here, and then go over here and stack cargo. So this would be a fueled S1, fully fueled upper stage, basically. So an S4B with a Saturn 1B with basically no payload on top. So you could have some fuel left over in the S4B, and then you use the S4B, CSM, and LEM, rendezvous them all in Earth orbit, and then go out to the moon just like you would with the Saturn V. This would have to do it in 3 launches. So between this and Complex 34, that's 3 Saturn pads. So you have 1 with crew over here, now that I'm thinking about this. 1 with crew and 2 with cargo. So you could do LEM, CSM, S4B with no payload. And you could rendezvous all that in Earth orbit if you needed to. This was a backup to the Apollo program in case the big boy didn't work. After the Apollo program and after the Saturn V worked, they shut the pad off. It did launch a couple of Apollo missions too, which is actually pretty cool. Like that right there. You can see the kind of horizontal service structures parked between pad A and B right there. See that? This seems like an extremely bad idea. No. Why would it be a bad idea? So Artemis style? Yeah, kind of. Thousands. Kind of. That's a Saturn 1, believe it or not. That's not an Saturn 1B. That's a Saturn 1. Why not just use 2 big rockets? Graham, you must not have. Were you listening? What do you think I'm talking about here? Now, because I'm genuinely confused. The Saturn family of rockets was made as a family of rockets to gradually scale up. Believe it or not, Redstone, Jupiter C, and Juno are all part of that family of rockets. So Redstone, Juno, Jupiter C, Saturn 1, which is made up of Jupiter C and Juno parts, believe it or not. It's basically Kerbal, where you wrap fuel tanks around each other to make a bigger rocket. And what was learned from the Saturn 1 program transferred to the Saturn 5 program. So you went bigger and bigger and bigger every time. This whole complex, I'll just reiterate just in case. This whole complex, this and Complex 34 were made in case the Saturn V didn't work. So when you ask, oh, well, that sounds dumb, why not use 2 bigger rockets? Well, this was made in case the 2 bigger rockets, or in this case, 1 bigger rocket didn't work. Remember, President Kennedy challenged the United States to get to the moon by 1970. And if the Saturn V didn't work, well, guess what? Use the next best thing, which would be the Saturn 1, which was still a pretty damn good lifter in its own regard. So yeah, now that I'm really, I never really put too much mind to it, but now that I'm thinking about it, you have 3 Saturn 1B pads here. Crew, LEM, stage. That's how they probably would have done it. But it never got that far because the Saturn V worked and we won the space race. Hey, all right. Since it worked, why didn't they make an even bigger rocket? Oh, I know you put a kappa there, Faber, but they tried. They tried. They were going to. So, with that all being said, now you have a little bit of a history lesson about Slick 37. Delta 4's last launch out of Slick 37 was... Give me 1 second. Yeah, it was earlier this year. L70. The last mission. Since then, the pad has not gone up for sale, but reverted to Air Force ownership after ULA vacated the property in April. The other Delta 4 pad on the West Coast, subsequently Slick 6, had been vacated, and SpaceX actually took the lease on the pad. SpaceX took over the lease on Slick 6 at Vandenberg. So, SpaceX took the lease on Slick 6 at Vandenberg, and I'm hoping this RFI will give us a tidbit of information on what is going to happen to Complex 37 in the future. Now, it could potentially be blue, Chris. Yeah. Which would be less complicated, Saturn V or the 3-launch system? are you guys paying attention? Or am I just talking at the wall? I'm generally confused. Was what I explained not clear? And I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just genuinely curious. Was that not clear? Did you always talk to a wall? Which would be less complicated, Saturn V or the 3-launch system? Well, okay. It's a trade-off. It's always a trade-off. Saturn 1Bs are easier to build. They're easier to build, they're easier to fly. Because the factor of difficulty going from a heavy launch vehicle to a super heavy launch vehicle is not twofold. It's like fivefold. All right? The bigger the rocket you build, the more difficulty. The difficulty exponentially goes up. So it's trade-off. There was an NASA engineer named Joseph Shea that was basically the guy that was just tasked to figure this out. Okay? Figure out the trade-offs. Do you build a bigger launch vehicle and send the crew, the lander, and the upper stage to get them there all in one shot? Or do you rendezvous everything? So the first way, the Saturn V way, is called an LOR architecture, Lunar Orbit Rendezvous architecture. The second way, the one with the Saturn 1Bs, is called an EOR. All right? Because at the time when they were trying to figure this out, they weren't sure if the Saturn V was going to work, and they needed the Saturn 1 and the Saturn 1B subsequently to test hardware to qualify the Saturn V to work. Like they tested a lot of stuff with Saturn 1s. Not a lot of people know that. The first LEM that flew into space did not fly on a Saturn V. It flew on a Saturn 1. Apollo 5, if math serves me left.
Oh, this is space. I'm in space.
Novoraptor gifted a sub to explore your Uranus. I'm not saying it that way. Anyway, so it's trade-off, right? Saturn V is easier. It's an easier architecture. It's very simple. You launch everything at once. You don't have, you minimize rendezvous proximity operations. You minimize the amount of times docking, etc., etc. But building that vehicle is more difficult. The Saturn 1B, right? Easier launch vehicle to make, much more difficult mission architecture up there. Because now you're trying to attach the LEM to an upper stage, and then you're trying, so the LEM now has to do an extra rendezvous operation, and the CSM has to go up and it has to rendezvous with the whole thing, and then you're dealing with potential propellant boil off problems here with the S4B, something that still hasn't been solved today. SpaceX is working on it. They'll get it. They will get it. The reason why it hasn't been worked on is because we haven't tried, for what it's worth. So with the EOR architecture, John, you have a much more complicated mission, but a much simpler launch vehicle.
Oh, this is space. I'm in space.
Hired gifted a sub to the square hole. Where does this sub go? That's right, it goes in the square hole. So because you're making this really difficult to explain. I'm trying to explain engineering trade-offs at square hole. You can't make this easy, can you?
Discovery.
Oh no,
Throttle up.
53-month resub. Thanks, man. So it was a trade-off. Now, because the Saturn 1 was used to test a lot of stuff for eventually for the Saturn V, right? They needed to figure out how to get the Saturn 1 working so they could eventually figure out how to get the Saturn V working.
This is
So
space.
once
I'm in
the
space.
Saturn 1B was like good to go and they really started working on the Saturn V, they were like, NASA basically said, why don't just build a couple of extra pads for this thing and have
this
a
is space.
fallback
I'm in
mechanism
space.
in case the Saturn V doesn't work. And that's what they did. You already have, so they got Saturn 1B, Saturn 1 and Saturn 1B working at Slick 34 or Complex 34, right? It was all working really well until Apollo 1 happened, but they got it working and they said, just build two more of these pads. Those pads are simple. They're really simple structures. Saturn 1, and that's the difference here. Like Saturn 1B can have just a launch pedestal and a fixed tower next to it. And it's really not that big of a deal, right? Like this is pretty simple architecture for what it is, right? I mean, it's certainly no catch tower by any means, right? Like Saturn 1B was like the Falcon 9 of its day, or could have potentially have been. I mean, obviously no boost back and landing, but you just basically take this stuff and because it's missile derived, you could just stack it. You stack it outside. It doesn't matter, right? Most complicated part probably is the S4B up there, but I digress. So, building more pads was pretty simple at that point. You know, GSE is always complicated, but once again, it's not like we're building a, you know, it's vertically integrated, really easy to stack, no horizontal, no transporter erector. It's much simpler architecture. So they built more pads, and it was NASA hedging their bets, which is actually pretty smart. You animated almost every monitor on the green background. I really like it. Well done. Thanks.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Yeah, I have some of them shut off because those GIFs malfunctioned. NeoQ, 32-month resub, hired, gifted a sub to ELI5, and Chuck gifted a sub to Uranus Mel's. I'm not doing it. I'm not playing these games. The Saturn V was like 200 billion per launch. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you have to figure out how to do it. And you have to build all of its launch facilities to do it. Conan, it's very... not million. Saturn V was expensive. Yeah, it was expensive for the time. Scaled cost is approaching $1 billion, if I remember right. But that also takes into account the pad, the VAB, Complex 39, Michoud, all the test facilities at Stennis, and everything that you learned from the Saturn program as well. Yeah, that's how NASA compounds costs. It's not just the cost of the launch vehicle. It's the cost of how much does it cost to buy that raw material, and everything involved from taking this aluminum and Inconel and all these other parts and making it into that. How much does that cost? That's how NASA calculates price per launch. So the Saturn V seems super expensive at the end of the day, which you got to understand, building a super heavy launch complex like Complex 39. Yeah, that wasn't cheap. You know, I was talking about how the Saturn 1B's architecture is very, very simple. It's very simple. The launch pads are very easy to make. They're not hard. This is about as simple as you can get. Fixed service structure, launch pedestal, flame deflector, no, like a small suppressor system, and that's about it. Compare this to a Saturn V's pad that has to be moved by the crawler transporter, and it has to get put on a gigantic, basically pyramid, you know, sitting on top of the dirt because of the weight problems that you have with Florida soil, right? See the difference? That's the trade-off, John. Does that make sense? I kind of have mixed feelings about Joseph Shea, as I see him throwing North American under the bus for Apollo 1 fire. Kind of insane, given that North American suggested a non-pure O2 cabin, but NASA overruled them. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Hey, Arsenal converted a Prime sub to Tier 1. Thanks, man. That really helps me. Prime subs are 50-50 split. Tier 1 subs are 70-30. So I make more money. More money goes to me if you don't use Prime. But, you know, I ain't begging by any means. Prime subs are still good too. Okay. The DoD document mentions stuff that makes you think Starship is going... Spoilers, man! Jeez! All right, let's read. Description. This RFI is in support of additional market research by the Department of the Air Force, Space Force, and Space Launch Delta 45 to identify potential sources to lease Space Launch Complex 37 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Florida. Due to the unique attributes of Slick 37 and the goal of maximizing assured access to space in support of national security objectives, I'm not saying all these acronyms, I'm just saying the Department of Defense, okay? Are committed to ensuring the best use of this property. Hey, Chris. Thanks for converting that sub. I need something to drink, dudes. Too much crap in the throat. Canceled Amazon Prime, keeping the priorities, though. Thanks, Arsenal. Excuse me. Saturn V looks amazing on the pad. I agree, Pi. It's an absolute unit. Even to this day. All right, let me just do one more throat clear, and then we'll go. Imagine what SpaceX could do with NASA's budget. Imagine what NASA could do with SpaceX's goals. Think about it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that really flipped the coin there, didn't it? Huh? Interesting, right? No, that's seriously the problem. You know, NASA is pissing away money because they have no goal. That's the problem. They have no goal. You give them something to do, then money starts getting spent correctly. Case in point, Apollo program. Building the space station, another good call. You notice the only time during the shuttle program where the shuttle actually operated on a pretty damn reliable schedule, safely, was when they gave it something to do, like build the ISS. Weird, huh? Never heard of any ISS shuttle missions going wrong, did you? Food for thought. And before people say Columbia, that was not an ISS mission. Remember that. Anyway, let's keep going. The Space Force seeks to issue a lease under 10 U.S. Code 2667 to a space launch company to construct a launch recovery and other associated space transportation infrastructure and to conduct launch and reentry activities at Slick 37. Commercial use of Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, real property, advances U.S. space capabilities and provides launch and launch support facilities in furtherance of U.S. policy to launch national security and other DoD payloads into space. Freddie, 68-month resub. Thank you. A space hab mission. Yeah, David, it was a mission that that should have been to a space station. The problem is the space station didn't exist because they tried to build a space station in the 80s and they said, no, don't do that. Build a space station with the Russians instead and cancel the damn program. I'm good. Anyway, the DAF will execute a lease after completion of the required environmental planning documentation. Okay. This action will further Congress's grant of the authority to the Secretary of Defense pursuant to 10 United States Code 2267, Commercial Space Launch Cooperation. 2. 1. Maximize the use of the capacity of the space transportation infrastructure of the Department of Defense by the private sector in the United States. 2. Maximize the effectiveness and efficiency of the space transportation infrastructure of the Department... Okay, God damn it. I'm getting extra passionate there. Sorry, it's I don't know if you've noticed, Faber. Spaceflight is something that I'm very passionate about. Could you tell? Could you tell? All right. Faster cooperation, commercial space activity. All right, cool. Slick 37 is one of the largest launch sites at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It is in the northern portion of the station and is capable... Why is Oculus open? Get out of here, Mark. Is it in the northern portion of the station is capable of supporting super heavy class launch vehicles. I'm going to show you pictures. The DAF seeks to enhance its ability to deliver greater mission capability, expand efficient access to space, and enable cost-effective delivery of cargo to space. The DAF also seeks to expand the launch program portfolio diversity and capabilities through the lease and improvement of Slick 37, which was most recently used for Delta IV Heavy with ULA. Slick 37 will likely need substantial modification to accommodate a new launch program. The DAF is interested in responses from companies that can demonstrate that they meet the following requirements. Launch a super heavy class launch vehicle, sufficient financial maturity, increase launch diversity at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, maximize the benefit to the space industry and the U.S. economy, highest technical maximize productivity when limiting adverse impacts. Interdasting. Let me read each one of these now. The Space Force does not currently have super heavy launch capability at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. As Slick 30... Implying that the Space Force has super heavy launch capability somewhere else? Question? Vandenberg? They don't have super heavy launch capability over there, unless, I mean... Well, Falcon Heavy from 39A would be the only other one.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Redman! Hey, thanks for that Prime sub. I appreciate it, buddy. Interesting. For a second there, I thought they may have been talking about SLS, but Falcon Heavy is a super heavy launch vehicle on paper. It doesn't have super heavy payload volume capacity, but it is a super heavy launch vehicle. New Glenn with Slick 9 at Vandy. I would say that's fair, NG, yeah. As Slick 37 has unique attributes that can support super heavy launch vehicles, maximizing mass to orbit per launch is a priority. For the purposes of this RFI, super heavy is defined as a lift capacity greater than 50 metric tons to low Earth orbit, or 50,000 kilograms. So that's what is that, 102,000 pounds? Somewhere in there. That's over 100,000 pounds. Times that by 2.2, and that's your number. So, to demonstrate the ability to meet this requirement, respondents should provide a list of any super heavy launch vehicle with super heavy lift capacity to low Earth orbit that you intend to launch from Slick 37 within 5 years of this RFI. Financial maturity. That basically means you need to have money. You need to, they're not going to, if I wrote an RFI to this and it said, oh yeah, I have a super heavy rocket that in my dreams that I'm going to make in the next 5 years, they're going to be like, no, no, you do not. The fact that they mention recovery hardware rules out Blue Origin since they'll only be doing drone ship landings, right? I've noticed that, Conan. Also this, I'm pretty sure New Glenn's payload capacity to low Earth orbit is 40 tons. Not 50. It's 40, I'm pretty sure. Unless somebody double check me on that one. So it's Starship, could be Falcon Heavy. Could be Falcon Heavy. Now, interesting tidbit of information here, guys. SpaceX's twin landing pads at the Cape, at the former Launch Complex 13, which is now Landing Zone 1, right? 45 metric tons. Interesting. So it can't be New Glenn. Interdasting. So, see this? That's Complex 13, or LZ1. 2 landing pads for receiving Falcon Heavy boosters. SpaceX let the lease expire on this. The lease is expiring next year. And the Air Force, the Space Force already has another customer for Launch Complex 13. They already have another customer ready. Yeah, we read that in a Space Force Delta, Space Launch Delta 45 paper about CC Cape Canaveral Space Force Station upgrade plans. They said that the SpaceX has terminated their lease. So we know that for a fact. Yeah, they gave it to Via and Phantom or something. Yeah, exactly. Somebody's already has Complex 13 lined up. Now, the complex we're talking about is up here. So, it has to be above 50,000. So, it's not, that rules out New Glenn. Can't be New Glenn. So, we need a vehicle with financial maturity so the company needs to not worry about going bankrupt. It needs to be super heavy launch capable. What's the difference between an LC and an SLC? The name, John. The name. So Falcon Heavy and Starship are the only ones that really fit this bill, guys. That's it. There's really not much else. Increase launch diversity at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The DAF is seeking to increase the number of launch vehicles that operate on Cape Canaveral Space Force Station to provide resilience in the event of vehicle or infrastructure anomaly, factory work stoppage, supply chain disruption, or other launch impediment. With more requests than available pads, Space Launch Delta 45 seeks to bring new launch vehicles to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station rather than providing second pads to any launch vehicle currently operating at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Well, Falcon Heavy, well, you got to remember, Falcon Heavy does not operate at the Cape. It operates at Kennedy Space Center out of 39. To demonstrate the ability to meet this requirements, respondents should address whether your intended vehicle for Slick 37 currently has a launch site on Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. So that rules out Blue. It's not going to be New Glenn, even though Jeff said he was pining for this pad. New Glenn already has a pad at the Cape. It's over here. It could be New Glenn in 5 years. Maybe. I doubt it. I highly doubt that. I think Starship fits the class perfectly. We'll see. Maximizing the benefit to the space industry and U.S. economy. Launch services are foundational to the health. Describe unique capabilities of the launch vehicle. Okay. Technical maturity. Here's what makes me think this is more Falcon Heavy than Starship. Right there. So, Delta 45 intends to allocate Slick 37 to a launch provider with a launch vehicle that is technically mature enough to begin operating from Slick 37 within 5 years, to best utilize the site and ensure it does not sit idle. What does technical maturity mean? That means it works. That means it works. That right there tells me that, I mean, don't get me wrong, SpaceX in 5 years, Starship will have a high technical maturity. Falcon Heavy has a high technical maturity right now. Right now. So if it was Falcon Heavy, right, it would be a rocket that the Department of Defense is already familiar with, has very high technical maturity. Falcon Heavy works, right? And all you got to do is just build a new pad for it. And landing sites, which is not, that can easily, SpaceX can easily crank that out in 5 years. They could crank that out in a year, like probably a year if they take their time. Categories of maturity to be considered will include National Security Space Launch Certification. Falcon Heavy has that. Successful missions. Falcon Heavy has those. Test flights. Falcon Heavy had one of those. I was there for that. Production and design. Falcon Heavy is built. It's made. To demonstrate the ability to meet this requirement, respondents should submit a schedule of projected milestones showing how the intended vehicle will be operational on Slick 37 within 5 years of the date of the RFI. Yep. I say Blue is going to be launching off LC-12. Agreed. Looks like that dual pad theory for Falcon is true. Yep. That pad can already handle a 3-core rocket since Delta 4 Heavy was 3 cores. Yes, that's correct. Maximizing productivity while limiting adverse impacts. Proposed launch operations must strike an appropriate balance between maximizing productivity while also limiting adverse impact to other launch operations to capitalize on return on investment for the government and protect public and preserve critical national resources. Yeah, minimal environmental impact. The DAF will consider the impact of the launch vehicle's proposed operations on other operations at the Space Force Station in order to minimize disruption to missions at other launch complexes while operating at the highest rate of productivity. The DAF will assess the impact of launch vehicles, explosive arcs, and concept of operations on other Cape Canaveral Space Force launch complexes, processing facilities, and transit routes. For vehicles that use LOX or LNG propellant, Delta 45 Safety Office will define the explosive arcs for consistency. To demonstrate ability to meet this requirement, respondents should provide projected launch rate, mass to orbit per launch, quantities of fuels needed, explosive arcs, and hazard areas, including explosive sighting maps and work or approved mitigation alternatives for anticipated impacts to neighboring operations and transportation routes, and projected launch rates across all the company's launch sites. That one, LNG. They said LNG specifically. They didn't say methane, which is interesting. Starship uses liquid methane. It doesn't use LNG, David. Those are two different things. They're very, very similar, but they like have 90% commonality, but they're not the same. Interesting. Do you like the YouTube thumbnail? Do you like it? That YouTube thumbnail's ace, dude. Oh, boy. So, okay. That last one is a little strange, but honestly, my gut is telling me this is Falcon Heavy. There might be a little bit of confirmational bias in there because I had a wild theory a little while back that this would be a twin Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy launch site. Yeah. Yeah, that was my wild theory. Why? Why put 2 pads here? Well, it's like they said, Slick 37, guys, let me show you what Slick 37 basically encompasses. That's Slick 37. That's the area allocated for Slick 37. Actually, it's a little bit more than that, technically. Let me give you kind of like the whole spiel here. That's 37 right there. For the most part. This isn't exact. I know it's not exact, but that's the gist of it. The point that I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of space around here. There's a lot of space. Okay? So what we had theorized because of this is that SpaceX would put 2 landing pads right here and have two Falcon pads here and here. I'm serious. 2 Falcon pads. And 2 transporter erector routes going this way, and basically restoring the original twin pad complex for Slick 37. And then have your landing pads over here, so you could still do RTLS or Falcon Heavy from here. Now, what was the impetus for this theory? The impetus for this theory, for me, at least, and keep in mind, this is my theory. If they're going to do it, I don't know. So the idea here is that you... Let me talk about the impetus for theory, and then I'll get back to that in a second. The whole crux of this is that I think SpaceX wants to get rid of Falcon from 39A. They want to move Falcon operations off of 39A. The reason why? Starship. This is the only Falcon Heavy launch pad right now, 39A, and it's really difficult to build a launch pad and operate off the pad at the same time. Why is that? Well, when you're launching, you can't be building your launch pad right next to it. There can't be people working on it. So you have bottlenecks here, right? I think that SpaceX wants to move Falcon off of 39A and dedicate 39A to Starship operations. It makes sense when you think about it. Slick 37 can handle super heavy operations, but the Space Force admits that if you want to change it to super heavy operations, they gotta assess the productivity impact, right? And they also admit up here, they said, where was it? Yeah, the northern portion of the station is capable of supporting super heavy launch vehicles. DAF seeks to enhance its ability to deliver greater mission capacity, expand efficient access to space, and enable cost-effective cargo delivery. They want to expand their launch program portfolio. They said up here that retooling it for Super Heavy would potentially need a lot, right? This is already tooled up for Super Heavy launch vehicles because it launched Super Heavy launch vehicles once upon a time, right? Once upon a time. This is already tooled up for a gigantic launch vehicle with at least a 12-meter core. Yeah, it only launched vehicles with a 10-meter core. But see how small Falcon looks? On the pad, there's a Falcon 9 with a Dragon up there. You see how tiny that sucker is for the rest of the pad? You'd be stupid to not use this for Starship. And the trench should be able to take it. It should be able to take it. How do I know this? The trench that SpaceX is building at Boca Chica right now for Pad B is the same width as the one at 39A. It's a 16-meter trench. Interesting. Now, that was my impetus for this entire thing. So I started thinking about, what do you need to do? What do we need to do to make that happen? Well, to move Falcon operations completely off of 39A so you could use it for Starship, right? What do you need to do? Well, crew missions first and foremost. That's the only pad. It was the operative word. It was the only pad that could move crew into space. But if we go down here, if we go to Slick 40, Space Launch Complex 40, which is the workhorse pad in this picture, they have a crew access arm and a crew access tower. And this pad did successfully launch Crew 9 into space. Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov, if I'm remembering right. They only launched with 2 because Boeing left their NASA made Boeing leave their astronauts up there. Yeah, it only launched with 2 because of Starliner, right? Butch and Sonny are going to come down on that Dragon. So the Dragon went up with 2, came down with 4, because Starliner went up with 2 and came down with nothing. At NASA's insistence. I'd like to remind everybody that despite dumping on Starliner, Starliner did return fine. It returned correctly, but we never really heard anything beyond that. So, you have crew operations, right? We have 2 pads with crew operations right now. So SpaceX, that's one. The other thing is Falcon Heavy. You can't launch Falcon Heavy from any other pad. That's why I think SpaceX is looking at Slick 37 for Falcon Heavy. And then what they're going to do is set up a multi-pad launch complex on 39A. That's my idea. That's what I think they're going to do. I think. That's my idea. So now, down here, it makes sense, right? Not a lot of people know that Slick 37 has 3 HIFs in it. There's 3 of them. See them? 1, 2, and 3. It was originally a twin horizontal integration facility for Delta operations. They actually added one after that and to build Delta 4 mediums so they could build Delta 4 heavies in the pipe, because when Delta 4 was made, it was anticipating a very large launch market. That didn't happen. Dot-com bubble burst. Launch market collapsed. Didn't happen. These are twin HIFs. There's 2 there, and then there's another one there. These actually ended up just being used to store parts, and then they only ever used 1, as far as I can tell. So, you have 2 HIFs here. You have 3, actually. You could put 3 TEs in here, right? If you modify this to have 2 paths roll out, 1 path to roll out through here to go to pad A, and another one to roll out to go to pad B, which it basically perfectly lines up with just by random coincidence. Well, it's not random coincidence. Well, it kind of is. That perfectly lines up. So you have one crawlerway, or a HIF transporter, right? The transporter erector, not a HIF transporter. And you have double crawlerways go like this, and then you have the second one go like that, right? Now you have a Falcon 9 pad and a Falcon Heavy pad. Well, it could be either one. One would probably stay for Falcon Heavy, the other one stays for Falcon 9. Or at the very, 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 very least, right, you don't even have the second one. You just have one Falcon Heavy launch pad right there. Right? See what I'm talking about? Yeah, then SpaceX came along, right? Or you could do twins, and then you could put your launch pads or your landing pads right here. So you could land Falcons and then bring them right back into the HIF. Your Falcon Heavy side booster. You could land Falcon Heavy side boosters. You just grab them with a crane, move them right back here. You could take the processing hardware, and the crane from the landing zone, right? Just literally grab all this stuff and bring it right down here, right? Pretty cool. That would make it so you have a Falcon 9 pad, a Falcon Heavy pad, a Falcon 9 cargo, Falcon Heavy, and then Falcon 9 crew right here. That gives SpaceX more capability than what they have now with less launch complexes. Well, not less. It gives them more capability now with Falcon with the same amount of launch complexes because Slick 37 is a twin pad launch complex. So I think that's what they're going to do. I think this is the whole theory. There's all, who knows? It could be cool. I mean, I was thinking like you could actually have the transporter do something like this. You could have it do something like that, and then you could have the other HIF for Falcon Heavy that goes directly like this. You could do either one. Because the transporter erector right of way at Vandenberg does something like this. It turns at Slick 4. So this wouldn't be the first time we've seen something like this. How cool would that actually be? 40 would stay crew, cargo wouldn't risk it on anything else. Yeah, exactly. That gives you one crew capable pad that's dedicated for crew spaceflight. That gives you a workhorse pad for launching Starlinks. And that gives you a dedicated Falcon Heavy pad, right? For Department of Defense missions. SpaceX has the lease on 2 pads right now for Falcon operations. If they switched Falcon operations off of 39 and kept it to 40 and 37, you have 3 pads for the price of 2. And that's the most redundancy in Falcon 9's architecture. You could support an extremely high launch cadence with this, which, if I'm remembering correctly, SpaceX wants to do with Falcon. They're aiming for 150 launches again next year with Falcon 9. 150. They're at, what are they at right now? 120 and change? There's 15 more missions. They were aiming for 144 this year. They looks like, and barring some catastrophic problem, looks like they're going to get close. They're aiming for 150 in 2025. That's Falcon. A lot of forest to chop down. Why not follow the existing road? Well, you need kind of a wide radius, Faber, to... All right, hold up. Excuse me. One first double launch just for fun. That would be pretty cool. Okay. Look. Let's take a look here. See, Vandenberg has the crawler transport, or not the crawler transporter. Vandenberg has the transporter erector actually make a huge 120-degree turn. Well, it's actually a 60-degree turn, but you get the idea. So what would be the radius of something like this? Let's just... Oh, pivot point is over here somewhere. Because that's the start of the corner. So we have a radius. Let's just say our radius is 175 meters. And let's say that that's the tightest turn that this thing could take, right? 170 meter radius, right? Because once again, I think that might be what it ends up looking like. But it's not just one turn to get to A, right? It would be two, unless they want to angle pad A inward like this, right? So let's just say 175 meter radius, okay? That's Mexico. 4 landing pads for dual Falcon Heavy launch. That'd be pretty cool. So let's see. Let's measure. Give me a straight line coming out of the HIF right here. Said, give me a straight line. Right? So if we measure 170 meters off that point right there, we're 175, right? Where does that put us? So this would only be a 45-degree turn, not a 60, right? But check this out, Faber. That's really interesting. And once again, this could just be, on the other hand, it could just be some crazy coincidence. That's amazing. It's like that date is the crux of the entire space-time continuum. On the other hand, it just might be a big, amazing coincidence. So if you have a 175-meter radius from the straight line point of this thing crossing into the BDA for Slick 37, 175 meters, it exactly lines up with that road. And that road is pointed exactly at pad A. Okay, let's dig a little bit more. Let's dig a little bit more. I want to see something. And once again, this is just theory crafting. I don't know. Who knows? All right, so let's go from there, right? Let's actually clear it, right? Get our line tool, and let's make a line that goes this way. All right. Now the pad, obviously, right? The pad has seen better days. Pad A was never used, as far as I can tell. So the launch pedestal was right here. So the rocket would have launched right here, and the diamond right there next to the square hole would have been for the fixed service structure. It would have looked like that, right? Now, that road goes right here, right? So what I'm interested in seeing here is if we go to the pathing tool and we measure from the launch point, we go south 175 meters. Does the radius line up? It doesn't. See, it doesn't line up. Could it? Yeah. If they angled the road a little bit more, you could make the path look something like this. Right, even then that second turn is a little tight. And then the other HIF would go directly to the other pad. You could do that. It almost lines up perfectly. And that's taking into account what we would assume is the tightest turning radius for their transporter erectors, right? So here's the other thing. The Space Force said they want to, if somebody does propose something for this, they want to make the pad downtime minimal. So the other thing to consider here, you want to build this into a Falcon Heavy launch pad, right? Falcon Heavy doesn't fly very often, but you already have a Falcon Heavy Falcon 9 TE capable right here. What I think would be done, crazy idea, in the downtime between Falcon Heavy missions, literally take this, why don't we just take this launch pad and put it over there? Take the transporter erector. Why not? Take it. That restores Falcon Heavy very, very fast. Falcon Heavy operations happen very quickly. That's minimal downtime for Falcon Heavy, if any. Right? Because Falcon Heavy for the DoD only flies once a year. Basically. I mean, it's only going to fly once, maybe twice a year. So that leaves a lot of downtime. You could time it so you take operations off of 39A and move them to Slick 37, right? And get the yellow line sorted out quickly. Right? So build out a crawlerway here. Lift the 39A transporter erector. Build the pad out right here. Or, you could even use Delta's pad if you want. You could use Delta 4 Heavy's pad. Just literally take the pad off of 39A and put it in Delta's spot. That would be the quickest way. But I'm not sure if this thing, you'd have to widen this a little bit. So, food for thought. Why not keep ops where there already are for Falcon operations other than symbolism because 39A, am I missing something? Yes, you are. Read the RFI next time. Here. Yeah, Erudite, I think you came in late. Read this. Let me link it. According to NSF forums, the turning radius is 66 feet. That is not the right vehicle hired. No, that is referring to the Cometto. That's the vehicle that I really, really appreciate. That's the Cometto, dude. That's, give me one moment. No, I want to show people. Hey, Snacklist, what's going on? So do you think SpaceX will turn LC-39A into a dual or triple Starship launch complex then? We'll get into that in a second, dude. That's this thing. Also, nice W250 right there. Yeah, see, this thing has a turning radius 66 feet. That's still pretty good for what that is. But the transporter erector, I don't know about that. So, why are we talking about this? That's not a Falcon 9, right? Just in case anybody is uninitiated here. Why are we talking about the shuttle all of a sudden? That's not Falcon 9. Well, let me show you something. This Cometto transporter was originally built for the Air Force to move the space shuttles around Vandenberg. The Air Force pulled out of the Department of Defense program, and the Cometto was moved to the Cape to move the shuttles around at Kennedy Space Center for the remainder of the shuttle program from 1986 onwards. The Air Force pulled out of the Space Shuttle program because of Challenger. At the end of the shuttle program, this thing got auctioned off. Hey, Galactic Surfer, 40-month resub. The Cometto got auctioned off in a public government auction, and a private spaceflight company acquired it for 37 grand. Guess what they used it for?
Oh, this is space. I'm in space.
I'm actually not even sure they use it anymore. I think it's too slow. Hey, Snackless gives it a sub to BVS 90. Yeah, pretty cool. Check it out. That's it in 1985. That's in 2011. That was in 2016. This little thing has been moving spaceflight hardware around for NASA and SpaceX for over 40 years. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, that's the vehicle hired is talking about. Yeah, they got it for 37K. Yeah, we know because the government auction was public information. Somebody bought it. Pretty cool, huh? I don't even know if it moves Falcon 9s anymore. I really don't think it's fast enough. The thing doesn't have a high top speed. Got your Cape tickets booked. Hopefully this time it'll fall on a launch. There you go, man. There you go, Snackless. It's black and white, partially reusable. Must be Falcon 9. You should check the GovBox sites for hot deals. No. Anyway, Erudite, read this. There's a criteria. The government put out a request for information on Complex 37. And I'm explaining that I think Falcon, a lot of the request criteria seems to fit the bill for either two launch vehicles, Falcon Heavy or Starship. It does not fit the bill for New Glenn. They want to convert Slick 37 into a super heavy vehicle launch complex, meaning 50 metric tons to low Earth orbit and above. New Glenn does not do that. And there's specific nomenclature in this RFI for landing operations. That can only be two vehicles. New Glenn doesn't land on land, remember? So it ain't New Glenn. It's either Starship or Falcon Heavy. I think it's Falcon Heavy, personally. This is the angle to the pad. Yeah. Falcon Heavy also needs a mobile service tower at some point as well. Yeah, Snackless, we actually Alex spotted a long fairing. Yeah, it's there. I already mentioned it, but I'll show it again just for you, buddy. Check it out. They got a long fairing. That's the Falcon Heavy long. Why is it? So here's the interesting thing. This picture that Alex found is from a launch from Slick 40. See it just chilling over there? Why is that over there? Why is a Falcon Heavy fairing nowhere near a Falcon Heavy launch pad? Something to consider. Guess where that picture was taken? Right there. That Falcon Heavy fairing was sitting in this parking lot right here. What's the closest pad to that parking lot? Slick 37. Just saying. Just putting it out there. How big is it? Bigger than a school bus? Oh, way bigger, Lord Gugu. Falcon 9's current fairing, the one that's reusable, can fit a school bus inside of it. Yeah, those fairings are deceptively large. Strong independent fairing who don't need no rocket. That's right. So, yeah. So, case rested. So, that's what I think. Now, we could explore the other theory. The other theory is, I mean, this is personally what I think. I think that there's a twin HIF actually a triple HIF right here. There's a 3-bay horizontal integration facility here. I think that if SpaceX got the lease for this, I think they're going to use the third HIF for storing Falcon 9s that are ready to go. And then they're going to have two transporter erectors here. One of them is going to be the 39A transporter erector that they just put on a SPMT and moved over here. Why? Because that has a straight shot. It's a straight shot at Pad A. The old Pad A, or Pad B. That's Pad B. It's a straight shot at Pad B. So, if you built a ramp right here, and then basically took all this crap and just moved it right there, took the mobile service tower and moved it all right there, you're still lining up with all the commodity lines, right? And you're basically good to go. The other thing that they could do is just make this crawlerway go like, or make the transporter, the HIF transport, do that. Or, another thing that you could do, if we go back into the pathing tool, is follow the existing, like that, and have one single one do the double radius, but that radius is too tight from what I can understand about the transporter erector. These are 175 meter radius, which is consistent with what's at Vandenberg. Just some food for thought. You could do that, but I personally think that it's going to look something like this. If it was me engineering this, But I'm not an engineer, so just keep that in mind. I'm just a guy. I think we'd see something like this. Right? And then SpaceX would just take this mobile service tower and just put it over here. And just build a new thing over here. That's just moving dirt around. That's not that... And you're not moving much commodities, etc., etc. Long fairing isn't reusable, right? I have no idea, Vargon. I have no clue. An acoustic test? Yeah, maybe, granted. Who knows? Why not SBMTs instead of a horizontal transporter? Because you go with what you know. Boeing is laying off everyone at these buildings. Building K6, Kennedy Space Center, Building 7, KSC M7505, Kennedy Space Center, Towway Road, KSC, one site without an address at KSC so people could take these buildings over. I don't know where those buildings are, goalie. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think they'll quickly retool Pad B for Falcon Heavy, and then eventually they'll retool Pad A for Falcon 9 and use that as a workhorse pad. They'll tool up this pad to be able to launch Falcon 9s basically every day. So that would give them Slick 40 for crew and overflow, Slick 37A for your workhorse pad, and then Slick 37B for Falcon 9 DoD missions with its mobile service tower. That would maximize Falcon bandwidth with the pads available, right? So, now, what's the other theory? The other theory is that this request for information, it does fit the bill for Starship. It absolutely fits the bill for Starship. Now, what do you do if this is Starship? Well, if this is Starship, I'm demolishing this. Just get rid of that. We don't need that. I would build 2 towers in the exact positions of 37A and B. And then build your tank farm right here. And have 1 tank farm service 2 pads, which is the original idea for Slick 37. Your hydrogen is over here. That's hydrogen right here, and that's liquid oxygen. Yeah, you have the commodity lines here, and the commodity lines used to go in both ways, but they demolished them a long time ago, right? But you have a good spot for a tank farm here and a good spot for a tank farm here. So you could have 1 tank farm feeding 2 Starship pads. Or potentially 2 tank farms feeding 2 pads. Or you could split it. Put methane over here, put LOX over here. Starship tower there, twin tower launch complex. Would you want to fly over your tank farm? No. That's why they're centered between the pads, Mutter. Does SpaceX produce their own LOX? They purchase it right now, Arian Rod. They purchase it right now. Looks like one of them is the operations support building. Uh-oh. K61094. No, 1094 is is PCC. I forget what PCC is. M7360. Space Station Processing Facility. Interesting. M7505 is PS. Interesting. Are pads the main bottleneck for Falcon at this point? I don't know, Snackless. I would say that the drone ships are the main bottleneck, but some logistics buildings. Put an OLM on either side of the towers, 4 pads. I don't want to hear about your acoustic issues. Yeah, I mean, Snackless, what could you do here? Dude, you could do the theory that I was talking about. You could have an OLM right here and an OLM right there and have 1 tower service 2 pads. That would give you 4 launch pads. So you could do catching operations and receiving operations. Actually, if it was me, I would flip it so the towers and the chopsticks are facing this way. It makes more sense that way. If your chopsticks are facing this way and your towers are over here. So in that regard, tank farm in the center, 2 towers here, chopsticks facing north, so that facing that way, right? And then 2 pads on each tower. That actually is pretty cool. Would that take less than 5 years to do? I don't know. That's my one thing. The Space Force seems to be looking for something that can be done quick so they could get super heavy launch capability out of Cape Canaveral Space Force Station quickly. That's why my gut's telling me it's Falcon Heavy and it's not Starship. Could be, though. You never know. It's possible. There's definitely the provisions here to set up a pretty gnarly Starship pad here. At the very least, something extremely comparable to Boca Chica. Food for thought. PCC is the Processing Control Center. Interesting. You got says Falcon Heavy just because of the mobile service tower. I'm with you. I'm with you on that one. Yeah, I agree. Now, what do Starship operations look like at 39 if you move Falcon operations off of this pad? What would our ConOps look like? Well, we know that SpaceX is demolishing this thing, whatever that is, a big launch tank or a water tower. They're demolishing that, and we've seen them starting to dismantle all this stuff here. So what does that mean? Well, you already have a tower here, so I don't know if this thing could necessarily be disassembled. You might have to demolish that. Take as many parts off of this thing as you possibly can and then demolish it. Has SpaceX done crazier stuff? Yeah, they have. I mean, they made another Starship pad here. Actually, that was a BFR pad. They made a BFR pad right here and demolished it, so very clear that they'll demolish stuff if they don't, if they see fit, right? So they were building a tank farm right there for Starship, but they stopped a long time ago. It's been abandoned for a little while. They just recently have started moving people back out here. So if it was me, right, this thing isn't finished, and the design has probably matured a lot since then for the towers. So, I don't know, get rid of that thing, try to dismantle it, use as many parts off of it as you possibly can. I would want to use the flame trench, the trench here. It's very clear that SpaceX is switching to a trench design with Starship, with Pad B. That's pretty obvious. Here. Actually, it just pulls up all RGV. Balls. Are you me right now? Look at that. This guy just... Yeah, okay. What's the distance at Boca for the towers versus 39A? That's what I'm trying to figure out, but... I just read the doc. Based on your requirements, it's definitely Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. Yeah, what I was looking for is... I was looking for some Boca Chica stuff, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So... here's what you could do. Just food for thought. You could have, if it was me, right? Okay, so they want to switch to a flame trench design, SpaceX, because Pad B at Boca Chica has a 16-meter flame trench. Guess how big the flame trench is at 39A? It's 16 meters. It's the same width. I don't think that's a coincidence. And their OLM is built to fit over a 16-meter flame trench. Also, weird coincidence. So what you could do here, there's a lot of space on the side of this because 39A was originally a clean pad design, meaning the mobile launcher sets down, you hook up the propellant hoses and the commodity lines to it, the vent and the water lines, and you leave a nice open space here. That basically made it so Pad 39A could be reconfigured for rockets quickly. Now, I don't think SpaceX is going to do that. I had a theory that they were going to use the VAB. That theory went out the door when NASA very recently decided they were going to use all 4 bays in the VAB for the Artemis program, which is pretty cool. So that leaves basically nothing here. So how would you do this? Hey, I'm 51-month resub, STS51. Yeah, there you go. Discovery with the Advanced Communications Technology satellite conducted a spacewalk for the Hubble servicing preparations. Cool. Too bad the pivot point for the shuttle RSS isn't still there. The kingpin for it is absolutely still there, Snackless. It's right there. You can see it. The kingpin, that kingpin for the RSS is absolutely still there. Would it be useful for chopsticks? Hell no. No way. Could expand the VAB north by a few bays. If NASA had some stones, they might be able to do it. So what I'm thinking is two OLMs right here. Two at the very least. You want to use a flame duct, right? But the trench at 39 is huge. It's really huge and it's really, really long, right? You could put an OLM right here and put an OLM right here and have one tower right there. Crazy, huh? You could do it. You install two deflectors in here, right? And have both of them on every time a Starship launches, right? And then you're catching right here, and then you could have a blank plate right here, like that, where you roll the vehicles up the crawlerway. Starship Super Heavies, you roll them up on their SBMT transport carts, put them right here. You have your tower basically exactly where the fixed service structure is, right there. And then you have a pad here and a pad here, and the chopsticks can pivot back and forth. Might it work? Might it not work? Who knows? That's just one theory. Now, the thing is that the other theory is that you could do that, and then you could actually build another trench over here if you really wanted to. That might be what they do, but once again, this RFI seems to be very specific about certain things. If it's Falcon Heavy, that confirms my theory that SpaceX wants to move Falcon 9 or Falcon operations off of 39A completely. Because why have 4 Falcon 9 pads? I mean, you could, and I'm not going to say I would hate that, but you got to take into account that SpaceX also needs a Starship pad from the Cape very soon. HLS needs to launch from the Cape, if I'm understanding where SpaceX's mind is at correctly. They want to launch the human landing system from the Cape. Why does the zoomed out top-down view of the launch pad look like a Star Wars ship? I don't know. I have no idea. Where will be a catch tower? That's another thing. You could have a launch tower over here and then a catch tower over here initially, if you really wanted. You could just make this a dedicated catch tower, but that seems to piss people off even suggesting that, so. Could the SBMT keep Starship level up the 39A ramp? Ordon, I have it on pretty good authority that it can. Yeah, SBMTs can tilt. They can do that. They can raise up, they can raise down, they could tilt, they could lean. Yeah, it should be able to do it. We've figured out the grade on this one time, and this is when I was figuring out if Starship could be in the VAB, right? Because I thought, oh, only the crawler transporter could lean to get a Starship up there, right? SBMTs can do it. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, dude. You could do 2 towers here with 2 OLMs or 1 tower with 2 OLMs. And then have that as a dedicated catch tower so you don't risk your pad, at least initially. That's what I'm thinking. The other idea that I had was mirroring this. Having a tower here and a pad, a tower there and a pad on the original 39A, and then a tower here and another pad over here. And then having the fuel farms basically feed all 3 of them. That was my other idea. This is all theory. This is all very much me theory crafting. There's a lot to take into account building 3 Starship pads like that. Commodity lines, HVAC lines, control lines, power lines. There's a lot of stuff to think about there. Just one more pad, bro. Please, please, just one more. I think catch tower is for the concern of downtime of a critical pad for Artemis flights where cadence is high. Yeah, that one might be a dedicated catch tower, and then they might just build another Starship pad here. But once again, I firmly believe that that 37 proposal, the 37 proposal is for if SpaceX gets this proposal, because it really can't be another launch vehicle. It could only be Starship or Super Heavy. It's one or the other. The vocabulary that they used in that RFI really kind of corners it down to a certain type of vehicle, a vehicle that can RTLS, that isn't already at the Cape, right? And a vehicle that meets NSSL needs. Actually, Falcon Heavy is the only one that meets NSSL. Dude, it's Falcon Heavy. I'm like 90% sure. If it's Starship, well, that wouldn't be bad either. But yeah, it has to be NSSL certified. Falcon Heavy's already NSSL's National Security Space Launch, just in case anybody's wondering. That's the DoD's big program for moving spy satellites up into space, or any other satellite. Not just spy satellites. They could be doing other things, but they might not be doing other things. Maybe they're doing, who knows? Falcon Punch, you're pretty good at predicting what will happen. Also good to see you again. Yeah, it's good to see you, man. Good to see you. Can we Falcon Heavy this pad too? Snackless. SpaceX already has the lease on Slick 6, dude. Oh yeah, that's already happened. Or that's already happening. I actually saw, in my travels, I saw their revision plans for how they're going to make, Slick 6 launch Falcon Heavies. It's a little weird, but it makes sense. Take it a step further, 5 Starship pads at 39. Heck, imagine 6. There's going to be a lot. Did it require certs now or within 5 years? They said the quicker the better, granted. But they did say 5 years, but the quicker the better. Great video showing how an SPMT works. All right. Oh, this is from Mimoot. All right, cool. Yeah, here, guys, check this out. Self-propelled modular transporters. Mutter will show this. SPMTs are really, really, really cool.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Watch. Hypersonic, what's up, dude? Deck remains level. Isn't that crazy? That's actually really cool. The power pack can actually tilt. It can, see? It can tilt up so it can go up steep hills. All right, Conan. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you could hook them up like Legos, by the way. They see me rolling. They move in. See? Yeah. Clicks together like Legos. Put the pin in. Bolt it together. Yahoo! Yahoo! Yep. Oh, you could, yeah. You could do that too. SPMTs are cool. There's a reason why you see them a lot in the spaceflight industry, because they can move whatever. I'll take 10. Yeah, so will they. Keep in mind, this platform that you essentially made can self-level. It's actually ridiculous. Actually crazy what that can do. So yeah, it would be able to do it. All right. Well, I do have one more thing for space news. It was one more long format thing. So that's what I think they're going to do. Who knows? I don't know. If you're on YouTube, comment about it, dude. I reply to the comment section. Yeah, I got to do that now, guys. We're gonna, the comments help get the video promoted. Thumbs it up, too, please. I feel stupid asking. Can it run Crisis? Maybe. They have a 1/50th scale model of an SPMT. It's 1,000 euros. Yeah, nope. Pass. We should talk about the gigabay news. We could. Yeah, if you guys have theories and you're watching this VOD on YouTube, comment it down there. I'll reply if you want to keep this discourse going for the VOD. Or if you didn't see this VOD when it was live. Also, hi from the past. It's pretty good right now. December 2nd, 2024. It's pretty good. Pretty good. A little cold. It's cold. If you're watching this in the summer, this is going to be this is really weird. Go to the beach. Why are you here? Why are you here on your computer? Maybe you have your phone on the beach. Yeah, in the future when it's warm out. Nice. Anyway, could you automatically sync two SPMTs without needing to bolt them together? Yes. Yeah, you can do that, Erudite. You just plug them in. Yeah, Brandon, dude, they're pretty cool. Hi from the present. All right, so Trey, what is the gigabay news? I've heard whispers about the gigabay, but I don't. Here, let's. I don't really know where it's going to go. I have a feeling it's going to happen, but that would be Starship news. So we got to go to Boca Chica. Girl mouth. So, this is Starbase. This is where SpaceX manufactures Starships right now. And the launch pads are over here. Well, the second launch pad isn't in this picture. Orbital pad B is right here. Good to know, big dog. Hey, future person. Don't talk with your mouth full and chew properly. Yeah, you. Yeah, that's right. Bob's talking to you. There's not a lot. I will send it to you 1 second. You think Starship is going to launch in early January like NASA put out? January 11th is what I've heard, Brandon, but no guarantees there. So, there was a time, Starbase is a gigantic indoor manufacturing facility, but if you're newer to the Starship program, let me tell you something. There was a time where SpaceX was building Starships in tents. Just quite actually big tents. Yeah, they were manufacturing parts in tents and then stacking them outside. Now, over time, they started building much bigger bays. And then they started building a dedicated facility instead of a bunch of freaking tents. Yeah, see that look at that. That escalated quickly. Right? What we think they're going to do, and once again, Trey's getting the link. Give me 1 moment. I got a message. Might be important. Okay, so I heard the Gigabay is going to be directly connected to Star Factory. Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking SpaceX is going to build a gigantic high bay called the Gigabay, and it's basically going to be as big as this, but as long as this entire corridor right here. I think that's what's going on. The idea is that you make an assembly line, guys. So we know right now, and you can tell from the way these buildings are made. You can tell because of the way it is. Check it out. So these buildings they're built in rows, right? See the rows? Picture in your mind each one of these rows being a conveyor belt. Okay? Conveyor belt. Right? And all the conveyor belts feed into a master conveyor belt. Right? And if you build out a gigabay right here, it'll have a door like this, basically right here. You build a gigantic high bay that's as long as this entire path right here, and then attach these two things into the side, right? So basically, it would be like taking this building and extruding it. Now, remember how I said each one of these are conveyor belts, right? They're conveyor belts. You start over here with a master conveyor belt, and you have engine sections for Super Heavy and Starship coming down over here, coming down the pipe over here. And then you have barrel segments, and then you have bulkheads, and then you have everything, right? You have all the different parts, right? Up until the very last piece. We know from pictures that fans have taken from right here that the last cell right here, this last area, is building nose cones for Starship. See how this is a little bit taller? It's a little bit taller because the nose cone segment is a little bit taller than just manufacturing barrel segments. And note that that assembly line seems to turn, right? The building is angled. That line seems to turn this way, right? If you were manufacturing a Starship and going down the line, what's the last thing you do? Put the nose cone on, right? Maybe over here is just for Super Heavy. Maybe over here, because that assembly line is shorter, right? It's a little bit shorter. This is a little bit longer. Maybe this is for Super Heavy parts because there's more barrel segments. I think that each one of these is a conveyor belt, so to speak, for different components. And then there's going to be a final assembly line that goes this way. And then over here, you'll just see Super Heavy and Starships pop out. Like candy, basically. You sent it to me. Okay. I have more examples for this in a moment. Let's see the link here. There is another thing that we have to discuss there. There's that. But we'll get to that in a second. SpaceX has opened up a job listing for the next vertical integration facility for Starship construction at Starbase. This could be a possible gigabay, as SpaceX has called it in the listing before editing out that word, to replace the high bay, or it's possible that all of SpaceX vertical integration facilities in Starbase, including Megabay 1 and 2. Are you going to apply? Maybe. I'm not a civil engineer. If they wanted somebody to come up with some theory crafting on Starship production lines, I'm pretty good at playing Satisfactory and Factorio for that matter. Just saying. Just saying. Elon, call me. Call me. I'm an uncivil engineer. Dude, me too. Jackass. Yeah, it made sense. It made sense. So anyway, they put this posting. That would be my theory for the Gigabay. I think it's going to be this high bay basically extruded, because it looks like it fits. Like if you take this and you extrude it this way, and then you move the door right here, right there, because that all pretty much lines up. Actually, it doesn't. It doesn't line up. But will you make that putt, you jackass? Sorry. So you make an entire bay here, and then you make basically a final production line for Starships, and they just roll this way right out the door. Going right past the altar, heading down the ramp, and out the door. Now, if you did something like that, guys, you could keep these bays right here. You could keep the two other, you could keep High Bay 2, or High Bay 1 and Mega Bay, or High Bay 2, Mega Bay 1, and Mega Bay 2, and just add on to them. Or you could demolish all three of them. Or what I think is going to happen is that the worst case scenario is that they're going to demolish these two. They'll demo those two and then just build out a giant mega base. So I didn't come up with these theories just because I like playing Satisfactory. SpaceX, the entire idea here is that SpaceX wants to make Starship like an airplane. They want airplane production, right? So they want fast. They want a lot of airplanes. We're not talking like 737s or 747 production rate. We're talking B-24s at Willow Run in Michigan rate. So like one a day, right? They said one every 8 hours in the last cast. So I can only realistically look at the last time anybody made planes that quickly. So what company made planes that fast? Ford. Ford did. That's right, Chevy people. Read it and weep, baby. You were making trucks. Ford was making B-24s. 2 of them a day at Willow Run during World War II. Now, there's not much left of the original factory because Detroit's going to Detroit, but check it out. That's the original Willow Run factory. Well, it's missing a lot of pieces. But if you look, the factory is kind of made almost in an L shape. Check it out. Henry Ford did the same thing with the B-24 production line. Here, check this out. Look at it. It's freaking beautiful. It's an assembly line for airplanes. Ford had twin assembly lines, 2 of them side by side. That's what these two, see right there? 1 and 2, right next to each other, tandem. They would start with aluminum components here, right? And it would feed this way, and then you'd have 2 production lines, and then you got to look at the older pictures of Willow Run, but they basically did the exact same thing. They had those 2 rows of production, and they just fed components in from one side. So all the components would basically come in perpendicular to the path of construction. Do you think SpaceX could meet the 8-hour goal? Well, Milji, hear me out. Just listen up. Yes, I think they do, if they copy Willow Run. So that's what Willow Run looked like back in the day. You could see that it's much better defined. The twin production lines are much easier to spot here. See how these lines go this way on the top of the building and the rest of them go, you have a lot of horizontals here. These are all the components needed to make B-24s. All of them right there. And as the B-24s rolled down the line, they would feed components from the side. That's what all this is over here. Twin production lines. It's super cool. Like if you're a Factorio player, this was Factorio in real life, man. Willow Run was beast mode. It was cranking out B-24s during World War II basically once or twice a day. Unreal production. Now from there, the twin assembly lines turned right and they actually moved into the hangars over here. The hangars are still there if I'm remembering right. Please stop. I have Satisfactory open in the background. I will do no such thing. Henry Ford sold the plant to GM actually after the war because he's like, I don't want to make airplanes. That's dumb. It wasn't, but whatever. What are you going to do? I'm trying to figure out. There's a plant schematic floating around here on the internet somewhere. I know it's around. Oh, there it is. Come on, website. Dude. Wait a minute. I said they were producing like 2 bombers a day. What was their production rate? A bomber an hour. Yeah, see? There it is. Oh, that's so damn cool, dude. So they had their lines go this way, and then final assembly was here. 2 long production lines, and then both of the lines turn. Up top, 25 a day, dude. I'm telling you, SpaceX, Elon's looking at this. Dude, he copies Henry Ford more than you might think. Vertically integrated plants, that was Henry Ford's idea. Henry Ford invented that 100 years ago. The Gigafactory, the Revue plant in Detroit is a gigafactory that was built in the 1920s. Literally steel comes in one side. Actually, not even steel. Iron ore comes in. Iron ore and petrochemicals come in one side and pickup trucks come out the other. Pretty cool. That's the original gigafactory. Elon did Henry Ford's playbook with the Model T, but with the Model S and the Model 3 instead. Fun fact. If he's going to do that with cars, I don't see why he wouldn't do that with planes. Ford, to this day, still was the fastest plane manufacturer around. Because of World War II, but it's true. I wish we could get a schematic of Star Factory. Well, Brendan, that's the thing. I'm trying to kind of put two and two together here. Like, you look at Willow Run. Willow Run is the perfect example of SpaceX wants a Starship every 8 hours. Now, so they don't want to go as fast as Willow Run, but that's the only thing that's even come close to producing stuff that quickly. Producing anything that flies that quickly. Let me put it to you like that. GM shuttered Willow Run in 2008 and demolished it, by the way. Thanks, General Motors. Very cool. Now they use it. They use Willow Run. They put that as a self-driving vehicle testing center. Yeah, that's right, Dark Crew. Yeah. Self-driving vehicles, man. Stupid. Anyway, sorry. Angry industrialist noises. So, once again, that's what I think. So, Willow Run would be a good place to start looking. And that's what I think they're going to do, like with Boca Chica. I'm pretty sure if I'm looking at how Starbase is set up, I'm pretty sure it's the same exact idea. So you have all your Starship components coming down each line here, right? And then you have final assembly. Now, keep in mind, airplanes are assembled horizontal because they fly horizontally. Rockets need to be designed vertical. So it's not going to be an exact copy of Willow Run, right? Obviously, you need a high bay. So where would be another place to look at rocket manufacturing, specifically vertically manufacturing super heavy launch vehicles? Anybody know where I'm going? Are we going this way? Are we going this way? Oh, you guys said it already. Yeah, we're going to New Orleans. We're going to Michoud, where Saturn V's were made. Right there. Now, keep in mind, Saturn V's were manufactured horizontally. Or they were assembled horizontally, excuse me. They were assembled horizontally, but they were manufactured vertically. And that requires a gigantic high bay. See what I'm talking about? There's a gigantic extruded high bay here. That building is huge. The high bay at Michoud is bigger than the mega bay, I'm pretty sure. Why would you manufacture them so far away? What do you mean, Arian Rod? So far away from what? I don't think SpaceX is going to manufacture here. I'm looking at the design of this facility as inspiration. Now, I have some pictures from the interior of Michoud from the 1960s. They're really, really nice pictures. There they are. Right there. See? Look at that. See, like I said, Saturn V's were assembled horizontally, but they were manufactured vertically. Now, let's see if we can get our bearings. Where do these pictures take it? These final assembly carts right here, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's probably right here, where the big doors are. See the gigantic doors? So if those stages are there, that would mean that the components are welded in here. They're brought in here, assembled, welded vertically, right? And then they go out here, and this is the assembly line for everything else. Rocket engines, structural pieces, etc., fins in the case of Saturn V's nacelles, and then you have your final assembly going down this way. Because I think that picture was taken here looking that way. Because these Saturn V's are facing the door. They're facing not the wall, they're facing the door. There would be 3 S1Cs right here, here, and here. Right? I would think that transporting that type of stuff around the US would suck. Not really. We don't transport it on land. SLS cores are still built in Michoud, Arianhood, and we just move them by a ship. Because, yes, moving them over land would suck. How are you going to move an 8.4 meter core around, or with the Saturn V, a 10 meter core? You're not. Spoiler alert. So, actually, Michoud doesn't have as big of a high bay as I thought. We've seen those cells work, though. How'd they get it to Florida? A boat! The Pegasus barge, the one that I just showed you, right there. They roll them out on these trailers, on the trailers, see? They roll them out on the trailers, and they roll them in onto a barge, covered barge, tow them to the Cape, and then tow them into the VAB from there. At least that's how they did do it. Now, these transport stands, right? If you notice the kind of trailer that holds it, it has a pivot point. The pivot point is right there. They did that so, you can tow it via the front and then attach a crane to the front of the Saturn V, pick the thing up, right? And it pivots on the back vertically, and then you can lift it off of its cart. They were, and like I said, manufactured vertically, assembled horizontally. That's how they got the thing on the cart in the first place, using Michoud's high bays. They manufactured all the tankage first. All the tankage and all the plumbing got assembled vertically. And then they installed engines and manufactured the rest and assembled it horizontally. Yeah. I actually should have a picture of how that all goes together. I'm pretty sure I do. Right here. This isn't for the Saturn V first stage, but it's for the Saturn V third stage. The first and second stage were assembled similar to this. See, you have all your components and manufacture it, right? And then see how assemble tank, hydrostatic test, it's all vertical, right? And then once you start putting stuff on your tanks, right, it goes horizontal. And then you do more assembly vertical, and then the final manufacture, right, is all done horizontally. See what I'm talking about? I mean, that's not exactly the case, but you get the idea. I can't help it. Please carry on. Is SLS Dunsky? No, it's fine. If I start a rocket company, I'm calling you to be a plant designer. I want to mass produce Saturn V's. Okay? Really, Darker. That's cool. Was the S2 assembled at Michoud? Yes. S4s were manufactured in California at Douglas's manufacturing plant at Seal Beach. That is also demolished. So from here, the Saturn V first and second stages would go on a barge, and they'd sail them up the river. See this riverway right here? That's all man-made, right? They would sail them up the river, and they would bring them here to this channel right here, to the Pearl River. And then they'd sail up the Pearl River to here. This is the John C. Stennis Space Center. From there, They'd offload Saturn V third stages. Third stage is here. Second stage is here. First stage is here. And it would static fire every single Saturn V stage. Just like SpaceX with Falcon 9. They static fire them at McGregor. This was the Saturn V's McGregor, so to speak. You have the A1, the A2, and the B1, B2 test stands. Yeah, they tested all the stages here. They hot fired them. After they were refurbished from hot firing, they'd put them back on the barge, sail back down the Pearl River, out over the Gulf of Mexico, around here to Port Canaveral, and they'd sail into Port Canaveral and go through the Port Canaveral locks right there into the Banana River. From the Banana River, you go north, you start to see a channel being dug right here. See that? That's not natural. If you follow that channel, the deep water to tow your stages goes right to the turning basin, the VAB. So you have your offloading area right here. And because the Saturn V's would be, at this point, they'd be backwards. So the engines would come out first. They would back them in this way, turn them around, and then put them right into the VAB transfer aisle. See the TA right there, that tall building? That's the transfer aisle. And then from there, you pick it up and you stack them on mobile launchers in one of the 4 high bays. That was the idea. Now, the S4B, the Saturn V third stage, did need a little bit of extra processing. That's what these, if you look right here, there's kind of a little extra building, like extra bit of tall building right here. There's 4 cells right here, 1, 2, 3, and 4 for S4B processing. Yeah, that's where they'd work on the third stages because they needed, to like put a LEM on them and stuff. The lunar excursion module needed to be put on there. The CSM needed to be put on that whole thing. So the S4Bs needed a little bit more processing. So there's 4 processing stools right there. Fun fact, they're still there. Yeah, they're still there. They've been sitting there abandoned since 1975. No one's moved them. There's no stages on them, but the processing cells are still there. Yeah, they're still in configuration for Saturn V. Didn't need it for the shuttle program. How can we help? Because right now, what stocks of space company can we buy? Rocket Lab, Astra, they're all public. Those are publicly traded. Your knowledge is insane. Thank you. It's a bit late, but I just checked the Library of Congress website has a detailed diagram of Michoud showing the assembly flow of shuttle external tanks. If you want reference, you can search survey HAERALA24 and look at image 4. Oh, cool. If you turn on 3D buildings, is there a model there? No photogrammetry on the VAB. Which is interesting because you have it on PCC, OSB1, and OSB2, and the solid rocket motor. That is the SRM aft skirt refurbishment facility, and then this is the solid rocket motor refurbishment facility there. Interestingly enough. Would the S4B facilities at the VAB get used for the EUS? They could, NG. I don't see why they wouldn't. That's not a bad idea. If for whatever you're putting on there, yeah, that's great. There's 4 of them. They're ready to go. 4 S4B processing, 4 high bays. You could build SLSs for days. If we decided to, the VAB has the bandwidth. The VAB has the bandwidth to launch 4 times a year easily. If you have the right mobile launchers, you'd need 3 of them, or at the very least 2. Anyway, I keep talking about that. I'm going to get pissed off. So, going back over to Starbase, I think we got an assembly line here. I think Starbase is built in a very specific way for this gigabay, right? Make things out of clay and lay by the bay. I just may. What do you say? I think they're going to build a gigantic assembly line here. But because Starship needs to be assembled vertically, instead of a long line like Willow Run, it's going to be a tall, shorter line. Maybe it'll be tandem lines like this. Maybe you'll have tandems. Maybe one for Starship, one for Super Heavy. Oh, that would be super cool. Did the S4B with a lunar module and CSM get stacked on the Saturn V as one unit? No, it did not. You could do that way if you were launching on a Saturn 1B. You could do it that way. Vehicle stage adapter, CSM, and S4. But I don't think they ever did. Okay, I'm remembering the processing flow. Give me 1 second. So it would have been S1C. It would have been interstage, S2, vehicle staging adapter, so the conic adapter, S4, and then LEM inside the vehicle stage adapter and CSM all in one shot. That's what it was. You can't put the LEM on the S4B without the cone. The reason why is the LEM is mounted to that cone. The reason why is load reactor physics with the descent module for the lunar excursion module. The LEM is actually hanging. The LEM is hanging inside of the Saturn V. I can show you. Hold on. Relevant XKCD. So this is the Upgoer 5. So Upgoer 5. Nice design. It's a kind of a very basic, funny blueprint for the Saturn V. So you have your CSM up at the top, and then you have what's called the vehicle stage adapter, this cone piece, right? If you look, the LEM, the lunar excursion module, you have your ascent module, and you have your descent module. Your ascent module is not very structural. The reason why? It's got to be light. It's an SSTO for the moon. Dude, that thing is so flimsy. On Earth, you could take like a screwdriver and punch a hole in the side of it. It was that thin. It just relied on residual pressure for structure. Not something you want in the main load path of this, right? The descent module is designed to have the ascent module on top of it. And the descent module is a lot stronger because the landing legs, it needs to land. It needs to be basically a mobile launcher that lands on the moon, right? It's a lot more structurally sound. So the Apollo lunar excursion module was basically hanging. The descent module was hanging inside of the adapter. How this thing bolts to the Saturn V is not down here. No, the landing legs are there, and your LMDE is there. That thing is really delicate. It's a rocket engine. You don't want that in your critical structural path. So they hung the LEM from the landing legs, or at least part of the landing legs, and the LEM bolts to the vehicle stage adapter. Yeah, the descent module is hanging inside of the vehicle stage adapter, or the service adapter here. It's hanging inside of it. And the ascent module is just sitting on top of it. That takes the LEM, which is super delicate, out of your critical load path. It's not being pushed up upon by this. It's only being pushed up by it. It doesn't have the weight of the CSM on it. It's tied into a structure that's tied into the command service module. So the critical load path, like the thing that's pushing you up, is here. And they attach the strongest part of the LEM to the critical load path. Does that make sense? Rocket Lab style. Where do you think they got the idea, dude? Launch escape system was added at the end. Yes. Flight termination system was not added inside of the VAB, Snackless. No FTS inside of the VAB. They saw that as too dangerous. So they built an entire mobile service structure to install the flight termination system on Saturn V. That's what that thing is. And the crawler transporter could pick it up and move it. Yeah, cool, huh? Why at Boca, though? Why will not always be limited by launches a year, and you can't transport to the Cape and Vandenberg? SpaceX had Highway 4, had a Highway 4 connector road right here, connected to the Port of Brownsville, which is a deep water port. See that road right there? SpaceX lobbied this road to be made. Not lobbied, they just asked, and they were like, yep, do it. So Boca Chica does have deep water access. An easier way to do it would be just to dig another deep water port right here and have a deep water port like the turning basin right there. You could do that. Maybe they will. Who knows? I think that would actually be a good idea too if you have a liquid methane or an LNG offloading terminal here and then a filling air separator unit on the pad. So you make your locks here and then you bring your methane in and you pipe your methane right to the pad. That would give you enough to launch a lot if you have a freaking LNG tanker or a methane tanker sitting here just pumping fuel into your launch pad. Not a bad idea. Right? So, hey, Goat, thanks for the raid, buddy. So you could do that way, but, you know, why Boca? Boca can only support 25 launches. Well, here's the thing. Think Tesla. All right? Tesla has multiple gigafactories at this point. They have one in Nevada. They have Fremont, which is still making Model S's. And then they have Giga Texas, which is making all manner of stuff, right? SpaceX is going to build another Star Factory over here. That's the short story. They're going to build another one here at Roberts Road. See that? This is where they already started to make one. This is where we saw OLM parts pop up. Orbital launch mount parts. And where they did manufacture some tower segments for the second pad. They manufactured tower segments for the second pad at Boca Chica in Florida. Fun fact. Now, I know what you're looking at. I know what you're saying. You're looking at this and you're saying, no, that's not big enough. That's not big enough for them to manufacture. SpaceX has all this land, by the way. From here basically that. They have all that land. They have a space big enough to do it. They're going to manufacture it at either spot. Yeah. This is all SpaceX land right now. That was actually super recent. So both the legs and the attachment used the same path, so there was one path the load was transferred both during launch and the moon. Smart. It's genius, Snackless. Genius. Like, dude, the Apollo engineers were on another level. Like Joseph Shea, Dornberger, Von Braun. Dude, it's so ridiculously well thought out. I don't know how they frankly crapped this out in less than a decade. Can you imagine the project management? The Apollo architecture is one of the most complicated architectures we've ever made, right? Dude, dude, if SLS is any indicator, great. You can have all the money in the world and still not. It's really easy to piss money away when you're in the space flight business, right? It's really easy to piss money away, right? The fact I'm frankly amazed that the Apollo program didn't cost more. That's what I'm trying to say. The project management was so good and the schedule was so damn tight. Dude, they had it dialed in. They were freaking cooking. How some of this stuff is set up is so smart, dude. It's so smart. Did you see the job listing for Gigabay? That's what spurred this conversation, Graham. Could they build megabays over in Sanchez? It's possible, but I don't think they will. It's just so freaking smart. I have it on personal testimony or firsthand testimony from. I've interviewed people that worked with Von Braun, and he was an insanely good project manager. Really, really good. Like, that guy had a sixth sense for how the whole vehicle. He could see how the whole thing was going to go together before anybody made anything. It's nuts, dude. He had this figured out in 1956. Dude, that's before like VABs even exist. In 1956, rocketry is, take it, use the crane, put it on the pad, and light it. Oh, God, I hope it goes. It's just... Like, they just crapped out the Saturn 1. The Saturn 1 is, all the Saturn 1 is leftover fuel tanks that were manufactured from the tooling from Redstone missiles, Jupiter and Juno missiles. That's all that is. If that looks like a bunch of fuel tanks wrapped around a truss thing, Kerbal style, that's exactly what it is. Not a lot of people know that. It's quite literally KSP. It's Kerbal. Here, I have some pictures of them putting them together. Look, see? It's just a bunch of fuel tanks. They took Redstone fuel tankage, extended it because they knew it worked, and then just wrapped it around on a with struts. Look, they wrapped them all together like a sandwich with struts. Dude, it's Kerbal. It is freaking KSP. That's what a Saturn 1B first stage looks like with no tanks. It's just a bunch of beams. Yeah. You see the Juno rocket? The Juno rocket, that rocket's fuel tankage is the centerpiece. This is a bunch of Redstone missile tanks wrapped around a Juno tank in the center. That's what it is. See? You see how the middle of Saturn, the middle of the Saturn 1 is a wider diameter than that? There you go. Crazy, right? Dude, he thought all this up. He just crapped out of his head. How does that even happen? It's not. How did that sneak in here? Like, what? What? How did they adjust the fuel flow? Some tanks were filled with just liquid oxygen, and some tanks are filled with RP1. I have the diagram for them. It's back in this picture. There you go. Dude, that's the plumbing. You have 8 engines. You're feeding 8 engines from a bunch of different fuel tanks. I think it has 8. Yeah, it has 8. You have a cluster of 4 in the center, and then 4 engines for steering. They're H1 engines, which went on to basically Thor engines. Delta, they're basically an RS-27, but an older version of it. How the hell? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Perez. How the frick do you think this up? How do you think that up in 1963? What? Actually, it was earlier. He thought this up in 61. What? How? What the frick? What was the Gox for? Let me see. Gaseous oxygen. The collector goes up the spine of the vehicle. I have no idea. Vent line, maybe. What the hell? Yeah, right? Crazy, huh? And that's the other nutso part, dude. Your center tank is still Juno, so that one has a bulkhead in it, right? So you're getting liquid fuel, you're getting RP1, and you're getting LOX out of the center tank, and then the tanks on the outside are LOX, RP1, LOX, RP1, LOX, RP1, LOX, RP1. They alternate. They did it this way so they could feed 8 engines correctly. Is that ridiculous or what? This is basically like, I'm telling you, it's a bunch of Redstone missiles just strapped together around a Juno missile. And they just clustered a bunch of these together and made a first stage out of it. The first heavy launch vehicle ever devised. That's what that is. That was the first heavy launch vehicle. Saturn V was the first super heavy launch vehicle. That is the first Saturn. That's SA500. That was the first Saturn V first stage being made, by the way. That's a shot of the VAB. There's them putting the stages together. That's putting an S2 on top of a S1C with the interstage. Crazy, huh? Is that ridiculous? Just how did you have this all thought up? Like, it still blows my mind, dude. Gaseous oxygen, Perez. Yeah, you got it. It looks like a vent line, if I had to guess. It goes up the spine of the S1C, and I don't know where it goes from there. On a Saturn 1B, the gaseous oxygen refers to the pressurized oxygen gas used to manage the flow of liquid oxygen within the fuel tanks of the first stage, which is powered by 8 H1 engines burning RP1 with liquid oxygen. Essentially, a small amount of oxygen is converted to gas to help with propellant system operations. They're using autogenous pressurization. They were using autogenous pressurization for fuel flow management. Dude, I don't know a lot about rocket science, but I know enough to know that that's pretty damn impressive. That's pretty damn impressive. It's kind of like autogenous pressurization, but they're not using the GOX tap off for tank ullage. They're using it for flow regulation, which how does that even happen? They're feeding it into a pressure regulator that's managing fuel flow. Maybe that's tank ullage. Maybe. I mean, when you think about what AP does, it manages. Part of what ullage propellants do in rockets is manage your tank head pressure, so you can get. Hold on. Hold on. Give me one moment. Modern engineering for design of liquid propellant rocket engines. Give me a second. I'm actually looking stuff up in a book on stream in 2024. Just thought I'd let you know. It's the starting sequence that I need here. Okay. Give me a moment. This isn't the flame trench. Quiet. Quiet, you. Okay. Yeah, okay, so during a starting sequence, you're gonna need to build up head pressure so you don't cavitate your turbo pump. So that, let's see. No, that's a gas generator combustor. Hold on. No, that's demonstrating an expander cycle. No, that's a sequencer. Now I'm getting nervous because I'm getting put on the spot. I know I read something about this the other day. Walls. I don't remember. This isn't the flame trench. Yeah. I have a book on how to fix a weed whacker. Yeah. That's good. Weed whackers are cool. A little two-stroke. Now we need book cam. Yep. There's something here about startup sequences with engines. And how there's something about like using tank ullage. So, all right, well, Maybe I'll find that later, and maybe we'll talk about it on Space News tomorrow. Long story short, you need your tanks pressurized, and when your tanks are pressurized, you need to make it so if you open a valve at the bottom of the tank, right, the pneumatic pressure pushes the fluid down into your engines initially. The reason why you want to do this, thermal conditioning. So when we watch a SpaceX launch, MVAC chill, that, right? But you can't just rely on gravity, because if you're making something that can be restarted in space, right, you want to create pressure, right, and have a little bit of acceleration on the vehicle, right, to settle your propellants at the bottom, and then make sure that they feed into the engine correctly. They usually go through on a pre-valve, right? And that pre-valve, you need to have pressure there. If you don't have pressure feeding into your turbo pumps, right, because your turbo pump is going to pressurize it even, well, it's not going to pressurize even more. Fluids are incompressible, right? Like, you'll get a higher flow rate. You need to use head pressure to get to make sure the impellers do impeller things, to make sure they move the fuel correctly. If you have air inside of that line and you're not feeding with the right head pressure into your turbines, they'll explode. Or not turbines, your impellers. They'll explode. That's the short story. Page 601. Rebuilding the carb is usually the answer for a two-stroke. I don't think there's 600 pages in this book, dude. No, it goes to 420. That was the highest number I saw. Your impeller is going to require propellant to be at a minimal pressure. I forget what it's called, Rocky. It's like mean tank head pressure or something. I read about this, dude. I can't remember it. Be at a min pressure, referred to as NPSHR. It's a function of the pump and vapor pressure for the fluid. A rocket turbo pump can only really get higher pressure on the prop inlet of the engine by pressing the tanks. That's it. With a non-cryogen like kerosene, this requirement is pretty loose since you aren't a supercooled liquid. But pressurized liquid oxygen, unless allowed to warm, will be supercooled, and thus going into the impeller with too low of a pressure will cause it to cavitate. That's what I mean when I say it's going to blow up your impeller. Your impeller will cavitate and it'll explode. Yeah, not great. Not great, Bob. Learn from blood, sweat, and tears. My knowledge was forged from years of pain. Nice. Yeah, Rocky, that's if I'm remembering right, that sounds a lot like the exact excerpt from this book. The NPHSR sounds right, but I don't know. But yeah, that's so they could be using GOX for to make that ullage pressure, like autogenous pressurization, but how would you do that? How would you do that pre-engine start? Unless you had a pre-valve there that trickles liquid oxygen into the engine for thermal conditioning, then it would create some gaseous oxygen. So, but see, like the thing is, Snackless, dude, I've never read that the Saturn 1B had autogenous pressurization. I've never heard of that. So that leads me to, dude, I would have heard of that by now. So that leads me to believe that that's something else. I'll have to go read on it. I will read on it after the stream, and I will report my findings to you. It has to be. Well, they specifically said it's not for ullage pressure. It's for flow management. A little bit of a difference. But then again, ullage does kind of partially manage the head pressure needed to feed the turbines. So it could be that. Maybe they just called it something different at the time. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that one. Rocky, thank you for helping me out, dude. I couldn't find the excerpt. I'll look for it. What book do you recommend to read up on thermodynamics? Any high school physics book, dude. Yeah, any high school physics book will teach you pretty good. Anyway, cool. Talked about airplanes being made, mass production, pad design. Taught you guys about a lot of things today. The last thing I want to touch base on is this Bloomberg article. All right. I can tell you how a pad would go together or how a rocket assembly line go together. You guys need to tell me what the hell is a tender offer. I don't know what that means. I'm man enough to admit that I have no idea what that means. Yeah. Can anybody help me out with that one? What is this? SpaceX discusses tender offer at roughly $350 billion valuation. What does that mean? Dating app lingo? It's an offer. That's tender. Thank you. I only know about Tinder offers. Private investor magic. So someone wants to buy shares. Someone wants to buy shares, insider shares at SpaceX at $350 billion. Elon Musk's company in discussion to sell insider shares. Rocket firm previously mulled $255 billion valuation. SpaceX is in discussion to sell insider shares that could boost the value of the company to around $350 billion. That would be a significant premium to a previously mulled valuation of $255 billion, as reported by Bloomberg News and other media outlets just last month. It would also cement SpaceX's status as the most valuable private U.S. company. So, dude, this website's ass, by the way. Yeah, I'm not sorry. Tender offer is for dipping the toe into issuing shares. First price sale, basically. Okay. So somebody wants to invest a lot of money in SpaceX by buying insider shares. So buying stake in the company, right? That's the idea. Am I understanding this right? Oh, dude, now I'm hungry. Jagoff. Snackless here. Sending me chicken tenders. Yes, and a tender offer means subject to change. Okay, Elon isn't stupid, right? This is obviously not for controlling stake in this company, right? That would be dumb at this point, right? It might that. Well, I mean, you don't know, but since it's private, we won't know who it is. Yeah. It's his company, whether guy, it's a private company that he runs. Yes, it is up to him, as far as I can tell. That sounds Middle Eastern enough investment. Guys, the U.S. government won't let another country invest into a traffic armed controlled company. SpaceX has stuff that's ITAR. They will not let a foreign company invest in it. So it's got to be something here. I know that for a fact. SpaceX has dual class shares. Elon has overwhelming majority. Limo, I have no clue what dual class shares means, dude. I do rockets. I'm not the... I can manage a checkbook. That help? Basically, it's a way of raising capital. I think if you work for the company, you're offered some shares. I can see the Norway fund being allowed. Yeah, I can't. Some shares can vote, some shares you can't. Elon owns 42% of outstanding shares, overwhelming majority of voting shares. He has total control over the company. If he wanted to close the company, to Seiji technically can. I don't know what that last word means, Limo. For what it's worth, I think SpaceX doing an IPO would be stupid. What would be a good idea is to spin off Starlink into another company a subsidiary company of SpaceX that's publicly traded. IPO Starlink. That's what I would do. You'd make a lot of money doing that. I wouldn't do SpaceX as a whole. That's a really bad idea, because that means you get into the whole fiduciary responsibility, blah, 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 blah. SpaceX couldn't go for decades like they do without being profitable. It'd be like, the shareholders would be like, my Falcon 9, it needs to make 30 cents per kilogram profit or else the stocks. You don't want diamond hands like that, or lack thereof. You don't want somebody to short SpaceX. That would be catastrophically bad for the U.S. space program. Not a good call. Yeah, Starlink arm limos. See, that I understand. I don't understand what dual shares are. Well, until you explained it. Interesting. Interesting. CAMC and GameStop. Dude, Remo and I were listening. Okay, so that's going to do it for Space News. Just one last bit here before I'll jog the VOD and we'll go to After Hours. Remo and I were listening to a book called Sapiens on the way to and from Detroit. And one of the chapters in it was talking, like, explaining capitalism and stuff. And long story short, there was a publicly traded company in France in the late 1700s on the French stock exchange, the late 1700s, early 1800s, right? Called like the Mississippi Company or something. And it was, Mississippi and Louisiana and basically all of the Mississippi River, like, estuary was French territory at some point. And basically, they GameStopped it. Seriously, somebody said, like, oh, this company's going to make so much money because there's so much land, and Mississippi is the best, and Louisiana, the best place ever. We have a new city there. We have New Orleans, blah, blah. It's great. It's awesome. It's awesome. We're going to make so much money off of this. And everybody went around saying that. And then they got everybody to invest crazy amounts of money because everybody wanted to make a ton of money. And the stock spiked, GameStop style. And without an SEC to stop it, like what happened with GameStop, somebody pumped it, like basically pumped and dumped it, and then it crashed the French economy. Because the government tried to right the ship. And they ended up betting like the entire coffers on this thing, on trying to prop up the Mississippi Company after it fell, and the entire French economy, government and private, went belly up. And that's part of the reason why the French Revolution happened. I'm like, oops. No. Whoops. Dude, yeah, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, dude, they GameStopped it. Their diamond hands bankrupted an entire country and caused the system of government to change. Oops. Dude, that was just fun other story. Trey, going back to SpaceX, it's an offer to buy shares, which if every share was at that value, the company would be worth $350 billion. Oh, okay, I got you. That makes sense. Yeah, not very baguette of them. That's also what happened to Scotland with New Caledonia, now Panama. We had to get the English to bail us out with the Act of Union. Whoops! We didn't have two Eastward Wars before GameStop, just saying. It's a good point. Yeah. Nova, instead of like halting trading like what the SEC would do in the United States, like what they did with GameStop, and Tesla after Elon said $4.20 a share, funding secured, right? Without that, so everybody saw it going up, and then all the biggest shareholders started cashing out. So it's not a pump and dump, but it basically is. And so some people cashed out, and dude, that stock went so far down and people lost so much money. The French government, instead of halting it, they tried to prop it up, and they put like the entire pension fund for France into this stock, and it still tanked. And they basically bankrupted the entire government. Oh my goodness, it's a ridiculous story. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, dude, this is GameStop without the SEC. Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm probably not explaining that exactly right, but yeah, still funny. Sapiens, it's a good book. Off with his head, because he could not pay me. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that space news. It's good to be back. I am going to move to After Hours now. I want to play some Workers for After Hours, if you don't mind. I haven't played Workers in a little bit. You should look into the Scottish version of it sometime, too. Yep. Some snake oil salesman had the idea of the century. Yep. Let them eat cake. Oops. If you want to learn more about how the ultra-conservative French monarchy were idiots, there's a good video that came out about the July Revolution in 1830. Whoops. Face the wall, chat. The entire U.S. economy collapsed for GameStop. What a timeline. Dude, that's why the SEC... So, the Securities and Exchange Commission can halt trading on anything if they think there's something weird going on. When GameStop's stock started spiking, they halted trading on it because like, they didn't know what was going on. You do not want the market to be dynamic like that, because then the market is kind of like physics, from what I understand. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, which is why you don't want boom growth. You want constant growth, right? Because then, when it's elastic. If you pull it apart too quickly, it's going to snap, right? If you pull a rubber band apart quickly and then kind of detension it slowly and then pull it apart even more, you'll be able to stretch it a lot further than if you just pulled on it, right? That's how the market works. Keep in mind, this is my personal perspective on it. It's probably wrong. You could come to me for spaceflight stuff, not economic stuff, right? But yeah, that's why the SEC halts trading, because if they see the rubber band snapping, they go, no. Because that, from what I understand, that is also kind of what happened in 1929. Yeah, the stocks started going down, and one guy sold, and then the next guy said, frick that, the stock's going down. I want to sell. I'm going to cash out. Everybody tried to cash out at the same time and bankrupted the banks. Whoops. I mean, that's kind of what happened in 2008 with subprime mortgages. Everybody started to collect on the mortgages all at the same time, and the banks went bankrupt. Good times. That's why the SEC, if they see something going too far, that like telemetry on a mission control screen, they'll go, no, stop. Yeah, that's what the Federal Deposit Insurance Commission is all about. Yes, that's true. That was implemented after 1929, right? They looked at that after and said, we probably need a regulation here. Yeah, The Big Short is another good movie about this too. Yep. That's how stocks to the moon, though, right? We don't want stocks to look like rocket launches. Yeah, right. All right. So, I'm going to jog the VOD. I hope you guys enjoyed Space News. Time for Workers, baby. Time for Workers, baby. All right. Yeah, there's a lot more details to it, guys. But yeah, I will be back in a moment. I'm going to jog the VOD over on the YouTube side. And we'll switch over to Workers. I'll be back in a second.